Okay, I'm sure you guys have seen the runtime already, and honestly, I've seen it too, because as of finishing this whole script, it's 57 pages long. That's after trimming the fat and getting rid of some of the less important points. See, for those of you who don't know, Daydream is a game that most people know of through YouTube shorts, which has been in mild controversy because many people were torn as to whether this game was real or not. Now, this whole video concept began when I was sick in bed before my kindergarten theory video, and was too sick to edit, but still want to work. Seeing they had made a short mentioning how they're planning on doing a Kickstarter, I decided that I would watch all of the channel's shorts to create a video that would talk about whether this game is a scam like people are worried about or not. Talking about cool things with the project as well as any concerns I have for its development. I mean, it's just watching a bunch of shorts and then writing down which ones I talk about, right? I mean, surely there isn't much to talk about other than like, oh, this character is cool, it's gonna do this thing. This is when they were named. Oh, here's what the trailer tells us, yada yada yada. I was of the opinion that this game is real, and I still technically feel that way. When I was going through with my sick-addled brain on my bed at 5 p.m. eating mac and cheese and koya, I went in thinking that it'd be talking about a handful of things on both sides and proving the game was real but had a few iffy things that people should consider before giving the project money. But then I started scrolling, and I should clarify, the game is a real file. That's the big contender for what people were concerned about, as many people thought it was just renders and animations, but that's not the problem here. Far from it. So this video is obviously long, and that's because there is a lot to discuss here. So I wanted to preface by saying that I am not trying to use this video to hate on the developer or anything like that, even with how hard I end up going at him later on, because like this video originated as, I'm mostly making this for people who are planning to donate to the game's soon-to-be-made Kickstarter, as obviously not everyone who donates to these things is going to be willing to watch over 180 YouTube shorts that have been posted in less than a year's time. This video is mainly meant to be me talking about my concerns with the development of this game, as I obviously can't determine malicious intent through something as basic as random shorts, but even assuming the best intentions, there are some murky, shady things that I believe anyone putting money into this should take into consideration before they put it in the piggy bank. So to sum all that up, don't harass this guy, please. Like, I've had several occasions in which I talk about a person and a gaggle of my fans just go mob them, so I just wanted to say, don't do that. That sucks and is bad and kind of undermines all of my points here. It's okay to inform other people, but don't be an asshole and stalk people, please. Thank you. We have a lot of points to get through, so I'm gonna be starting off with the lesser things like his older spam marketing and the stolen asset debacle, move on to more concerning things like the character bloat and getting free work from his fans, the weird thing about the pick a name videos, go over the is it a scam controversy, talk about what this game is even supposed to look like by the end of this, talk about the dev's other games, and then end off by playing the Patreon beta of Daydream to see if this alleviates any of these concerns. So I think we should start off with the lesser of these evils. Spam is when you send the same thing with little to no change over and over again. As such, spam marketing is something I've noticed where a business, or more often an influencer, will spam post the same video they already posted, albeit with a very minor change. XVIII himself commented on a similar practice in which another creator would post the same few reaction videos over and over again for the past few years with zero change. Near the beginning of advertising Daydream, Juniper, the developer, did a weird amount of this. There's not a whole lot I can say here other than just showing you, like this one with the voiceover.
Welcome to Daydream. I'll be taking back to your very childhood. Here, the new Daydream. The lines are composed and keyboard is like away.
There's also this Sun one who's only changed the music, this Pool one which was constantly spammed, though some will be in a slightly different order of clips. There's this Talking one that's also copy-pasted.
I make a wording based on our childhood stuff. Oh, and it will be more clear.
This School one, which again only changed the music, a Toys R Us one that later got scrapped, this video of Helio, this video of Carl, this video of a tree, and this one of Dove sound effects. And these examples were just from a cursory scroll from the bottom of the channel to the top of it. I probably missed a bunch given just how many shorts there were, and given I only went back when I realized, hey, didn't I see this short before? And got to a point where I was worried that YouTube wasn't showing them in chronological order from oldest to newest like I wanted. It was. He just did this a lot back then. It's not nearly as prevalent now, though he still does. He reposted this one just recently, but he's not directly reposting the same shorts with the exact same footage shot for shot as often. The reason I'm bringing this up, mainly being for a point that Juniper makes way in the future, which I thought this would be important for, so put this in your back pocket for now. We're heading to more important matters. If you know anything about Daydream, you know it for these two characters, Carl and Helio. These are characters that Juniper uses constantly for marketing. They're the one thing that everyone associates the game with. And when I made a community post on the game paired with this image, many people said that they have hope for the project because of the great character designs. What you may not know is that Juniper did not make this design. Helio is not a Daydream character. In fact, surprisingly few people seem to know that heliophobia is an asset off of the Unreal Marketplace, now called VII-a apparently, made by the artist Kopiko, though you may know the asset part thanks to this other character, Deadlight. See, Juniper posted a video seemingly out of nowhere announcing a redesign for Helio on April 26th, about a month after they originally showed the old asset. This shocked and confused people as many people preferred the old design, and since he hadn't said anything on the short side of things about this, many people wanted the old design back because they thought it was his. Not even a day later, he made a follow-up video explaining that he hears everyone's comments, but explains that the older design was an asset that he didn't fully own, and that the vote actually happened over on Instagram. Now, other than keeping it a surprise from the primary folks over in the shorts feed, this is a good way of going about it, because then you stop it from being the main thing people associate the game with, you can shift it over to a design you actually own. That is until the next day.
So here are the two final Sun entities that will be in Daydream officially, but they need names.
Entities. Wait, why are we deciding on another name for the older design? Is it not supposed to be in the game anymore, like, at all? That was the whole point of the redesign? To redesign the character so you don't use that one anymore?
There's a ton of comments regarding how everyone feels about it. I agree the old design was really unique, but since it was an asset and I didn't fully own it, and it did have a lot of reading limits, we need something we could fully build on.
So basically, even though they were going to replace this design with one that they can use, Juniper suddenly shifted to having both be separate Sun entities that are both in the game. From here, would continue using primarily Helio, or back then Lark, for their marketing. Even months later, still using Helio over Deadlight, the supposed redesign. In fact, they still make him the head of the trailer just 3 months ago, despite Deadlight already having long been made. Juniper is accepting him as the game's mascot again, and has not mentioned anything about not owning the design since. Not only is this a problem in that if he ever did replace Helio now, it's going to be much harder now that's been so many months more of using him as the game's mascot in the marketing, but also, that isn't the only one that's not an asset he owns. Carl isn't his either, which I don't understand why he never mentions this earlier, especially when he could have back when he was replacing Helio. Carl being owned by the same artist, Kopiko. If he was going to replace Helio with Deadlight, why not also mention the fact that Carl isn't his either and may also need to be replaced later? Instead, he hits everyone with the surprise announcement later in this short.
So I have bad news about Daydream and good news. So the bad news is I was unable to get the rights to release the plushie for Carl because it is an asset that I got way back before the game blew up.
In it, he says that he couldn't get the rights for the design from the artist as he was trying to get the right to make a plushie of Carl, and so he hosts a contest, we'll get into those later, for a redesign of Carl. In the video, he also states it as bad news for Daydream, and treats it almost like it's something that's happened to him, rather than a natural conclusion of what happens when you don't own the rights to something. But hey, Spice, you're being too harsh on the guy. I mean, maybe he bought these designs before the game blew up. Even if he took a while to admit it, surely now all the current designs are his. Hey, you know what would be really funny? You know what would be, if he had a design that was announced after Deadlight in the Carl situation that was made by the exact same artist. Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be funny? Given the fact he already went through the problems with redesigning after the fact when people get attached.
New entity, but I purposely did not show the whole thing because if I show the whole thing and we get a redesign, people are gonna be like, we want the old one back, right? So we're gonna avoid that.
And already was told that he can't create merch of the characters from that artist, I do not see a single reason as to why he did this again with the star entity months afterwards using the same language to imply it's his. But hey man, he redesigned the moon guy. You can't be mad at him when he redesigned the moon guy. Well, let's see the moon guy. Yeah! Oh, editing me. I think you forgot to show the redesign. This just looks like a fan art of Carl wearing socks. Oh. That's the redesign? Okay, sucks. Love those. But I feel like if the original artist of Carl explicitly said to not make merchandising of Carl because you don't own the design, and then you went around and made a plushie of this, I somehow feel like they could still sue you. If you take both of these characters, they have quite literally almost the same silhouette. These are hardly different at all. I feel like you gotta make a call here if you want your redesign to be a redesign. But I guess some of that is likely due to the fact that right before this announcement, he also made an announcement for a Phase 2 contest in which they want to make a second phase for Carl. And of course, they would naturally need to look pretty similar to go from one version of Carl to the other. Now, I should obviously preface that using assets is not a crime. In fact, you can buy these assets yourself right now from the artist's fab page. But what's sketchy is the fact that he only tells you when he tried to do the right thing the first time, in which he never mentioned it again when people preferred the other design, and the second time was only mentioned because he couldn't buy the rights to it, and yet he's going for round 3 with Star Sniffer over here without even having uttered the actual artist's name. That and the fact that he kind of implies that these characters are his from the beginning. Given the main thing people give him props for is the character designs, people should know that these designs are not his. And the other designs, we will get to. But first, actually, I wanted to pop in before the next segment just to re-clarify some things and make sure people 100% understand the point I'm trying to make and don't get mad at people for using pre-made assets in general. So just to preface, it is obviously okay to have marketplace assets in your game. That's the whole point of them being there. And I'm also not trying to say that he has to credit them every single time the sun or moon appear. In fact, the very same EULA I showed earlier says you don't have to credit the assets you bought. But what I am saying, the thing that is the problem, is the fact that he frequently implies that the characters are his, never corrects anyone when people think that's his, admitted to not owning the character when he was about to replace it only to walk it back and go back to calling it his own, and also planning to make merchandising like the t-shirts and plushies, things which are explicitly against the agreement as you're only permitted a license to use it for a game, and you can't use it in anything that makes it the primary focus of whatever you're doing. You don't get full perms to do whatever you want. The problem is that he makes shorts where these assets are the main focus, with hundreds upon thousands of fans under the impression that they are his design, with him only saying otherwise when he explicitly needs to. Of the over 180 shorts he has on his channel, he's mentioned it twice. I'm not saying that he can't use assets, I'm just saying he can't lie about them being his. If he's gonna keep using wording like this, he should clear the record in regard to who actually made the character, rather than letting people assume he means that they are completely his. A lie by omission is still a lie. And again, the fact that after both of the other times he did it, he wants to go in for a third time to use the star model in the exact same way, where he again claims that it's his new entity, that is a problem, and that is sketchy. And seeing that's a big point as to why people think the project is good, then people deserve to know that's not his, because there is a real chance the people who are putting money into the project are doing so because of these designs. And during the over 180 shorts, there have not been an utterance of his name, let alone a blurb in the description or anything else. These are the main characters you are constantly and consistently advertising your game with. The person who took the time out of their day to make these and rig these should get the credit that they deserve, given they are half the reason you've gotten this far. Oh yeah, just to cover my bases, with the part where I talk about Carl's redesign, that is from an actual artist that won the contest, which we will talk about the problems of later on, but I also just wanted to clarify that I'm not saying that's bad art, I am saying that's a bad redesign. And seeing Juniper pick the winners of these contests, and this is me going to CutCafe conspiracy land here, but I feel like he picked it because it was so similar, so he could keep the brand recognition he gained using the older version, and because people who are suddenly coming back to his shorts don't know the reason that the design is different. They just think it's like a slightly updated version rather than a full-blown redesign caused by the copyright infringement that would have brought him. Anyways, now to the next point. It's about time we talked about the concerns with the actual game itself, namely, just how many goddamn characters there are. Now, some of them are scrapped, namely, this teddy bear and this demon guy, as they've never been mentioned since. But as for characters that are seemingly going to make it to the full game, or are planned to, I'm surprised that so few people are concerned about bloat, in that there are so many promises for this game that he's either going to inevitably break, or have a 10-year long development cycle, assuming he stops adding new things right now. Let me just give give you the rundown. We of course have Heliophobia, Deadlight, and Carl. There's this mannequin entity that seems to be a weeping angel type of deal, imaginary friend who later turns to a monkey guy, an angel entity they want to add which they hosted a contest for, an entirely comment-made entity which is supposed to be an owl but hasn't been mentioned much since, that stolen star guy from earlier. They want to make this tree from back in their older marketing entity. They randomly bring up adding yet another entity in this video, claiming it's going to be true horror. There's this video where he seems to tease a plastic crocodile, and lastly with the most recent announcement, he claims he'll be adding something truly grotesque, that being a dog entity. And even then, he's still making comments about what the next wave of entities will be like. Meanwhile, the wide majority of these characters don't even have names or abilities planned, meaning their mechanics or how they will work in the game haven't even been considered before he moves on to the next shiny new entity, which doesn't bode well. We're at 11 confirmed entities, and if you want to count playable characters too, that adds an additional 5, with only one physically revealed so far being Jay. And again, with him mentioning the next wave before having the kinks figured out with the last nearly baker's dozen of monsters, that is quite a concern here. And the names and mechanics thing I was mentioning leads us to our next part. So the primary means of marketing Daydream, at least video-wise, is his videos where he encourages loads of interaction and comments by having people comment what they think the new entity's name or ability should be. This has been a thing from day one pretty much, but there's weird things with that too. Let's just look at all of Heliophobia's stuff. When he was announced, they made a short asking what his ability should be, and not long after, what should his name be. He would later make a video on what the top comments are. Seems great so far. Then there's a video asking again what the son's name should be. Okay, cool. Then we get the redesign fiasco. We already know about that. But then the son comes back as its own separate entity, in which he makes a third naming video, despite the name already being Lark, as he says himself. The video pretty much being to dog on the other name idea, Heliophobia. Only for Heliophobia to then win over Lark because of this third revo. Except now he has two names, because the other video that was supposed to be the finals had a different winner. So now his name is both Heliophobia and Mr. Sunshine. Okay, but what should its ability be? Again, in which we later get a follow-up video with the finals. Those being UV rays, a screech that breaks glass, and lastly the idea that they most seem to push for, it can shine traumatic memories, and if you stare at Helio for too long, you'll be transported into that traumatic memory and have to relive it. Which, just from an outsider's POV, feels pretty difficult to implement, both logistically and in a way that isn't extremely annoying to the player. And apparently, Juniper realized how hard this would be to implement too, as despite it winning, they would later silently swap to the UV ray idea instead. Anyways, which son would you choose? Hey! He also did a similar version of this with Carl that was a bit more egregious in that he asked multiple times for people to vote on abilities, only for no vote to occur and none of them to be picked. And for Carl to then instead ingest the idea of teleporting to a memory into a much easier to implement just teleports you to a random level mechanic, done in pretty much the exact same way. You look at him and he teleports you. The constant comment below type of video is a staple of the channel's marketing, to the point that I wouldn't be all that surprised if they are creating a backlog of monsters and entities solely so they can keep doing this type of marketing without running out. In fact, this is how several characters were announced, like the star whose name is either Node or Astro. Either way, it does make sense, as because of the mass amount of comments on these videos, they are pushed way more algorithmically and thus do way better and make more money alongside promoting the game. In fact, of their top 10 best performing shorts, 7 of them are of this type of style. Name the entity, give an ability. Which, although I can see this as being fine for a few ideas in a project, if you watch all of these shorts, it becomes pretty blatantly clear that pretty much all of the creative or interesting ideas of the project are made solely by the commenters. In fact, the comments don't just play ideas guy for names or mechanics, because he also outsources for merch ideas, the items, and even the fucking UI and settings menu. He does constant votes on Discord as well for things as basic as which of these are more nostalgic, to things that he should definitely already have figured out, like what should the art style of my entire game that I've allegedly been working on for 2 years be? Realistic, or like this movie I watched? Like, to do this once or twice I could understand. Near constantly, I'm gonna start wondering if you make any creative decisions at all for this project, big or small. Cause like A or B testing is a real thing, but not to this extent. Like, come on, man. Like, it's startling that he calls himself a creative creative director for this project and outsources pretty much all of the creative direction. I talk a bit more about his role in the project way later on in the video, but I just wanted to bring that up now, seeing as we're talking about how much the comments do. In a TikTok comment, he also had this really weirdly aggressive interaction I wanted to point out that I found while editing that is especially telling. How the hell did you make it? What'd you use? Referring to the game. Some other guy responded, Unreal Engine or Unity and some free assets. Juniper then responded, free assets. Yeah, we don't do much asset flipping over here. Nice try though. I take pride in my working in my models. Tasty, yum, yummy, yeah! In fact, I'm starting to think you're related to Tommy Tallarico, Mr. Juniper. You know, and the fact that you make broad claims and promises and then hope nobody does their actual research so you look like you do more than you actually do. And if we go back to the designs, you may have heard some of those other characters I showed and had some hope in your heart that maybe, because I hadn't mentioned them in the Sketchfab section, that maybe there is actual creative ideas, right? Right? The other big thing Juniper does a lot are contests for designs and redesigns when he gets in trouble for yoinking other people's stuff. But what's the reward for winning these contests? Well, the reward is that he gets to take your stuff. And that's it. Now, the obvious counter I'm sure I'm gonna get is that it's all okay because the artists enter willingly. But that line of logic quickly becomes flawed when you realize that the winners of these contests go completely uncredited for their art even after they've officially won. He credits reposted memes better than he does the actual artists. It's not like there's a place that we can scour through all of the art that was put into this contest either, as they're all entered by just sending them to his email. If he isn't willing to give a sliver of credit when the design wins, and doesn't even when said design is made into a 3D model, I somehow get the feeling they won't be credited when the final game is made either. In other words, you can't even say he gives you exposure, as he gave the people who gave him free professional work less than that, which makes me feel like it's less about, woo, community, like he claims, and more about free labor, especially when you get to things like the Steam cover of the game being outsourced too. Now, having a contest like this, if credited, isn't all that bad of a thing, but again, it's the sheer magnitude of how many he runs that if I was paying into this project, I'd be a little confused as to what Juniper is actually contributing, given that pretty much any part of the game someone might compliment is actually a compliment to somebody else entirely. We have the Angel contest for the Angel entity that he won, previously mentioned Steam cover art contest, that one Bad News contest where they sought to change Curl's design from stolen to morally ambiguous, which again, he had the finals as such similar designs that he likely can't use them in merch anyways. Carl's second phase contest, the Imaginary Friend contest, the only one that's finished to the point of an actual model, and of course, Deadlight, the only contest to not happen on YouTube. As such, if you think about it, the only character that has ever been his is Jay, one of the playable characters. And even then, I don't know that for sure, because it could just be some design tucked away in the corners of Sketchfab, and the fact that I have to worry about that at all is in major part thanks to all the aforementioned things I've talked about. The ideas are done by the fans, the designs are done by the fans and by Kopiko, the art is done by the fans, the mechanics as to how the game works is done by the fans, the items are done by the fans, the names are done by the fans, the UI. If you donate to this Kickstarter, genuinely where is the money going given how much of it is outsourced to free fan labor? And so of course, I think now is the perfect time to talk about the original conclusion of where this originally led people. Now, Juniper has countered this a handful of times, though not the more general idea of it, but more so proving that the game is a game and not just a bunch of pre-rendered clips that he's posting on YouTube Shorts over and over again. Well, not like spamming the game Shorts over and over like earlier, but more like just making animations rather than a game. That's what a lot of folks were initially worried about. It being a game and not like pre-rendered animations. And for that, I can say that I am of the belief that, yes, there is at the very least a game. And I think that part isn't something we should be too concerned about, as I feel like the problem is more with whether the game will be completely made or worth the funding that people have put into it. As the question of whether it's a game or not and whether it's a scam are completely separate. Either way though, in defense of his game, Juniper has made a handful of For the Skeptic videos, both shorts and long form, the day after I started gathering intel for this project. There's this video showing them testing out 10 people on one map. There's this older short that is one of the only peeks behind the curtain we've gotten so far when it comes to an actual entity doing entity things, that being this Weaving Angel mechanic. This short calling out those dang skeptics by showing them walking around a field, and the actual video I'm gonna delve into, the long form video, The Truth About Daydream. Is it a scam?
If you click on the video, well, you're about to see the real behind the scenes of Daydream. And if anyone tells you that Daydream is fake, just send them this.
So he opens up the video with Daydream's gameplay.
So this is the in-game play of Daydream. Jump, crouch, whatever, run, sprint, look back.
Okay, so you made basic movement. They describe the ability to jump, crouch, run twice, which isn't much, though what they do show is that the game does in fact have an Unreal file and claims that it is 265 gigabytes. Let me say that again. Daydream is over 265 gigabytes. That would single-handedly take up more than half of my entire computer storage space. That is double the base game of Ark Survival Evolved, a game that is notoriously bloated and is around 100 to 150 gigabytes before updates, DLC, or other jargon, which has had people jokingly saying that they can only play Ark because in order to have the game, they had to delete everything else. But some of that can be excusable because games are naturally much larger in development because of some assets are uncompressed, there's testing rooms, not everything's efficient, and playing games with AAA variety can shed upwards of 4 times the game's size. Now, there were quite a few other people who were concerned about the project's current size given how little is actually in the game that we know of, and Juniper answered these. When one person got on their case about it, he claimed roughly what I said a second ago, that the game will be 10 to 20 gigabytes when it's finished. When another, less critical person made a comment, this estimate then lowered to 10 to 15 gigabytes. So let's take 15, seeing as it's the middle of their larger estimate and on the higher end of their smaller estimate. That means Juniper would have to shed 17 times the game's size over quadruple of the high estimate of what massive game studios shed. Pre most of the game even being made, mind you. But let me put that to some perspective. Big games are unoptimized games, or at least they have a harder time doing so. Because the more things are in your game, the more things you'll need to make sure render in a way that won't explode little Tommy's computer. In fact, there's a certain game that used to explode on my older computer. A game by the name of Ori and the Blind Forest. An absolutely stunning game. My current computer that I'm using to record this right now can run it lag-free, while my older computer from 5 years back couldn't. As such, my brain associates it as the stress test. It's the first game I use to test how good a computer is. That game is 10.3 gigs. Its sequel, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, stutters during its more intensive moments, making platforming difficult and the game generally less than playable. It is 11.3 gigs. Both of the Ori games, with their intensively beautiful graphics and animations and more combined, is 21.6 gigabytes. That is only a third of Daydream's massive girth after shedding 4 times its current size. That 4 times data loss brings it down to 66 gigs, mind you. So if we want to take into account its current 265 gigabytes, that makes it nearly 12 times the size of it. Now, the size of a game doesn't immediately determine how well it plays or renders, but both of these games have animations and things that aren't reusable. And Juniper doesn't have a lot of their animations yet, or half of its entities, or even what the entities do yet. And it's 12 times 2 crazily intensive, multi-hour long games. And on Daydream's side, the over 250 gigabytes is before any of the characters or mechanics have been worked out, before the wide majority of the entities have gotten models, let alone be added, period, and before any of the actual gameplay loop has been created, assuming the ability to crouch doesn't get you mega hyped for a game like this. You know what would prove your point? Showing the gameplay. Just show yourself playtesting a random level, or dying to the sun, or something, and people will feel moderately better. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Let's continue the video. He shows off Deadlight's rigging and model. He confirms that he commissioned for both the model and its rig, W for the artists, and then we hit how much money he makes, something which he emphasizes at the start when he randomly mentions how he's not going to drag the video out for views.
And I'm not here to make this a long, overly edited video or drag it out for ads.
Now here we can see he's gotten 3 million views, mainly shorts, and Juniper uses the fact that he doesn't make much money off of YouTube to say that he's not posting shorts for money.
That is enough to give you, if you live in the US, this is enough to buy you like a pack of M&Ms and a slap on the cheek, right? Nothing. So like any allegations like, oh, he's milking the views for money, I'm really not.
And then from there he shows Social Blade and mentions how it doesn't count that well for shorts and is wrong. I can agree with that. In fact, just checking my Social Blade myself, it seems to think that I only made $50 a month, when luckily I make a lot more than that. I haven't hit minimum wage yet, but I can help my family pay the bills. Though if we look at the amount he shows here, it's still a pretty penny. That's $450 that he otherwise wouldn't have. Imagine if you were given a little over $400 every month month that you get to put towards your dream game. That's not even considering that he's had videos that have done more than that entire month. Namely, this one at 8 million, which I have no idea how much it actually made, sure, but it's probably a damn good deal given how many of these videos are just reused clips of your game with a caption on it. And on top of that, you need to remember that this game is constantly pushing their Patreon in these videos. A Patreon that has thousands of people on board. As of right now, they have 7,800 members, 530 of which are paid. Now, originally I did some weird estimates to figure out how much at the very minimum he's making, but now that we actually do have the paid member amount through the About page, I can skip all that preamble. He has a few different tiers, but for a minimum number, let's assume every single person that has donated only went for the $1 tier, the very lowest that you can give. That means he's making, at the very minimum, $530 additional dollars a month on top of his YouTube revenue, which is nearly $1,000 each month for your passion project indie game. Definitely more than just a pack of M&Ms and a slap on the cheek. And that's me assuming the absolute worst. You need to remember that he also has a $5 tier, a $10 tier, a $25 tier, and an $80 Carl tier, which we know at least one person has or had about a month ago when this video came out, and those numbers definitely throw you a hell of a lot higher, especially with all of the ride or dies on his Discord. There are definitely some 10 and 25 tiers among them. It would only take 4 25 tiers or 2 10s and a Carl to net you an additional 100. Oh, there's a new post. Oh god! Oh god, what the fuck? What is this? What is this? Why the fuck would you post that? The $1 tier outright states it has 500, and although not updated all the time on their title, we can see how many remain just by minusing the remaining number from 500, which currently gives us 494 minus 500, which equals 206 non-cheap tiers. So I actually throw out my earlier number, because if we calculate this, then the minimum Patreon number, seeing the remaining ones are at the very minimum $5 tiers, actually brings us to 1,324 of just Patreon money, which when added to the 440 YouTube money that he called low for him,
It's enough to buy you like a pack of M&Ms and a slap on the cheek, right? Nothing.
a real minimum becomes $1,764. And again, this is the absolute minimum. YouTube views change all of the time. So does Patreon. But to just show, oh no, I made only $400 while knowingly sitting on a stack of nearly 2K is really fucking deceptive. And the only reason he's bringing this up is for was effectively the Jake Paul defense of, I can't be doing something scammy or unethical because I'm not currently maximizing on profits. Because for some reason he really wanted to make sure everyone knows he's not doing any of this for the money, guys. Guess what, Juniper? Lying about how much money you make makes you look way more like a scammer than just posting some shorts. I keep having to graft on piece after piece of information because I keep finding weird and suspicious things about you, Juniper. Stop! You're making this video too long! What I'm saying is that if you combine his shaky YouTube revenue with his much more consistent monthly patrons, it's not nearly as small as you'd think. And I find it kind of weird that he left that part out, given how often he pushes his page over there. In fact, he does it again at the end of this video.
And for anyone that wants like more updates, I do update a lot on the Patreon because it helps support the game and the development of everything, and so I'll link that in the comments and in these videos.
Sure, it's not life-changing amounts, but if you're getting that alongside whatever other job you have to be putting food on the table, that's a nice hunk of cash, especially given it's being given to you for basically free, with you only needing to occasionally pop out a short with reused clips asking what to name your characters, and then another short asking people to do free character designs for nothing in return.
It's pretty straightforward. I mean, if people would just do like some of their research, or just DM me, like if you ever want to make a video on Daydream, I'll give you behind the scenes sneak peeks if you're actually gonna like make a video talking about the development and everything. I'm not really shy on anything, to be honest.
Now, I'm sure some people are gonna be upset at me for not contacting him because of this clip, right? And call me cynical if you'd like, but after doing my research with all of this and seeing just how he generally is with situations like this, I get the feeling that contacting him would just give him a chance to get ahead of the story. I don't want him to bury it like he did with the other situations where he just makes a quick vague short that kind of maybe technically covers it, and then all just goes under the radar with none of the people donating knowing the whole of this and how much is weird about the project. I have to trust my gut on this one. Slotting this in too, another reason that I don't want to contact him is because of something that I was originally going to leave out until I noticed something kind of weird. But basically, I'm not the first guy to make a negative video on Daydream, though even calling it negative is kind of stretch, as the video is more just critical but wanting the best for the project, it seems like. This is a small YouTuber named Mr. Weenie. In fact, I even made a comment on his video here when I first started researching, agreeing with him. Now, he didn't quite do as extensive of research as I have here in this video, as you can tell by mine being like 2 hours long, but we still came to some similar conclusions. And in his case, he did so in a significantly nicer way than I do in this video. He's still harsh at points, but his main point is the weirdness around the comment marketing and how he outsources naming characters and basic ideas to fans. And that's without him knowing about the sun and moon that aren't his either. He outright states he's cutting it some slack because of the fact it's from an indie dev, which is something I'll talk about later too, but pretty much all the guy criticizes is that he hadn't shown gameplay, which is true, and the marketing relying on the fans. Although he calls it shit at one point, he overall seems to be coming from a place of concern that he's too focused on the marketing and isn't doing any actual work on the game, and how he's trying hard to stay positive about the game but can't, finding it surprising how many people take him at face value. I should also, before I show you this next point, reiterate that this video only had around 1k views when I initially found it, and it has 1.7k views as of right now. Anyways, Juniper found this video within a week of it being up, and posted a pretty hastily typed angry and typo-ridden response to it. 2 of them, actually, where he claims he doesn't even make 3 times his living expenses, which I feel like making 3 times your living expenses would be living the dream in this economy. He tries to use the fact that Mr. Weenie contacted him in the same way that he wants other critics to, as he mentioned a second ago, as proof against him somehow. He also makes fun of the fact that he isn't in the Discord, which you need money to access, so not sure why this is a slight against him. And for the rest of his response, he pretty much just repeats that he's slandering him, claims that he said some swears, says that he was doing it for the views, and that if he really wanted to expose Daydream, he should have taken him up on getting secret behind the scenes things, which is what he criticized him a minute ago for asking for, and claims that if he did take him up on it, he wouldn't have gotten as many views, when using basic logic, one would think the opposite, because if you have exclusive information, then you'd have to watch his video to get it. So one would think that him getting exclusive information would have actually helped the video, and also I'm pretty sure if he did get exclusive information, you would have said that he backstabbed you, which is what you also imply in this. Whatever, this wasn't a well thought out message anyways. I should probably stop analyzing it. Now, I wasn't gonna include this originally, but the thing that made me want to slot it in here was something really weird I noticed. See, shortly after Juniper messaged this, he rushed out the very video I'm responding to here, as it was made within a mere 6 days, possibly shorter depending on when precisely Juniper's comment was. Now then, here's Mr. Weenie's video. This dreamcore horror game is a scam. We can see the sun guy on the left, on a black backdrop with some light, the Daydream logo, and then directly below the logo some text reading fake game, which has fake highlighted in red. Now let's take a look at Juniper's video. The truth about Daydream. Is it a scam? We can see the other sun guy on the left, on a black backdrop with some light, the Daydream logo, and then directly below the logo, some text reading real or fake in all red. Well, that's a little odd. Usually, Juniper just has the thumbnails be a still shot of a character, or one of the auto-generated images from YouTube itself. That's pretty odd that he made this video coincidentally look exactly like the other video, give a similar name, and even went as far as having the videos end at around the same length. Huh. Now, my pattern-seeking noodle brain here is trying to tell me that seeing Juniper's channel is larger, they knew the video would get, at the very minimum, more than Weenie's, and by having them look so similar, the average viewer might just mistake Weenie's video for a repost or copy of Juniper's video, and thus not click on it, causing Juniper's video to appear above Weenie's and eventually bury it due to the fact that when people type "is Daydream a scam," they aren't clicking on it anymore. That's so odd that my brain would think that. That's all just a theory though. I should also bring up that Weenie's gotten a lot of hate comments from random Juniper fans. I doubt the comments are too affecting given that their comments as creative as "you're a meanhead" and "even if it's fake, well too bad." So I guess he should just let him possibly scam people, because him saying "hey dude, maybe show that you're still working on the game" apparently constitutes as him attacking people, as Juniper replies to that last comment. So if you happen to remember, go send Weenie a comment or two on his old "is Daydream a scam" video saying that he may just need to make another update video. Cause it would seem game that there's some odd similarities here. And, you know, my parent-seeking brain, I just don't know why it thinks that. Not to mention that he also said in this that he wants any potential people covering his game in a negative light to contact him so he can give them secret screenshots and clips that nobody else gets access to. And that's just not fair. If the only way that a person can tell that your project is legitimate is with insider knowledge, then that in itself is not great. If the only way that people can know that you're not a scam is by forcing you to be transparent in the privacy of DMs, then how could you honestly blame them dang skeptics? Pretty much everything I cover in this video is something that you yourself can go check and verify and have your own opinions about. You can go check and find all 3 of those Copico assets on Fab. You can watch his shorts where he does the contest and then check the following shorts to find no credit. You can find the spammed, repeated reposts. You can find and count the countless entities I talked about. You can find the Patreon and go to the About page to see the Patreon things I just mentioned. And you can find the other things I'm going to mention, like his older games or his newer game. The only things that I have that are quote-unquote exclusive is the Patreon posts and builds I'm going to show later, the message about the Carl tier for the Patreon member chat. I think the Discord is Patreon only, and I sent an email to someone about Animal Tracker to verify something later on, which is something that's been clipped on YouTube prior. I just needed the unedited version from the poster. It is important to remember that if you came across this on Kickstarter or was considering putting your money into their Patreon, this is all information that I'm sure you or anyone else considering doing that deserves to know. Like that comment I showed that I found midway into editing where he sasses some guy for daring to accuse him of using pre-made assets only to use pre-made assets. Or the fact he isn't willing to take the 2 seconds it would take to add text reading credit to and then the contest winner so they can actually get something out of it and put it on their portfolio or something. It's bad. It's beyond concerning. It's a bad precedent. And if I and many other people knew that, they likely wouldn't donate large amounts of money to something like this, let alone monthly. Other thing about crediting of the artist, he finally does for one in this video in which he mentions Max made this design on his Discord.
This was made by a fan named Max in our Discord, and then that got made into this, which was not cheap at all. This cost a lot of money.
But again, there's nothing that we can identify him by, so still not very good, frankly. Sorry, continuing with the video again. He shows the blueprint for the player being able to move, which is neat, but again, all that shows us is that you can move a player around. Okay, coolio. He shows that doors are blueprinted, neat, okay. He mentions that he's blueprinted TVs that are active, whatever that means. Why not show us that? Why not show what they do in game? Do they do anything in game? Show that off. That shows you're making a game. We don't know what you're showing us other than it has code somewhere.
I mean, like, they're obviously like get all allegations like, oh, this game's not real, it's fake, it just renders, but it's like, why would I put out a product that's not ready to be put out? It's just gonna make everything worse for the game. It's gonna mess up the release. It's gonna mess up all the marketing. Like, people have to look at it from a marketing standpoint because this game has a lot of stuff, a lot of lore, a lot of things that you're gonna do in game that are gonna be super fun. And I don't want to put them out until they're ready. I don't want to put out something that's half made. Right?
Now this is the part where I'm gonna be a lot gentler in that I get that. I feel like that's a reasonable thing to be concerned about, but you also have to look at this from a person's perspective, in that the reason people keep thinking that this game is just renders is that you don't have to show off this massive piece of the pie or anything. What would ease literally everyone in regards to this game is if you just published a video of you beta testing a level. It doesn't have to be perfect and complete, but just show that the game has a level that you can do things in other than just walk, crouch, or basic movements. Show that you can die. Show that you can pick up an object and it does something. Because the way the game is right now, literally nobody knows what it's about other than liminal spaces. Nobody knows the goal. Nobody knows what the gameplay is actually going to be like. And that has shown people time and time again that they should be wary. Games like The Day Before or Zoonomaly relied on the same thing to arguably scam people into buying a subpar, glitchy end product, nothing like what was initially promised. Something else that Juniper brings up in the shorter skeptic video, he says that he doesn't like people saying the S word.
Like a game that I'm not gonna mention because a lot of people comment, hey, this is just gonna be this game all over again, right? And I feel like they kind of ruined it for a lot of people like me because I put a lot of work and effort into this game and trying to make it something for the community.
Which is in reference to Subliminal, another game that also is doing a bunch of TikToks to show how realistic of a dream horror game it is. And then as of writing, there's still nothing that's come of it directly. And also similarly relied on patrons to hop on and pay to beta test for the game. It's a similar situation where nobody knows if it's real or not, and he complains that it kind of ruined it for games like his. Also, some people seem to think that they're the same person. I don't, because with all the information we have, it just doesn't line up timeline-wise. But it is worth it to note that at the beginning, they had very similar marketing down to the exact same captions word for word. But I think that's just him having been inspired for it and possibly being the whole reason he started this game, but that's Spice's conspiracy land again, so. Though that does mean that Juniper has 100% seen that people are scared to support games that don't show their work anymore. And there are easy ways to fix that. This is post me again, as originally I was coming in just because I said Zoocosis at first instead of Zoonomaly, but honestly thinking more about it, this argument that he cannot show any of his work because of spoilers and marketing is really silly when you realize that not everything has to be the ultimate stuff. Show yourself doing something really benign, like texturing a pipe or a floor pad. Surely those kind of things aren't gonna spoil your entire game, right? Show you coding the camera jiggle. Show this or that, or fixing this tiny bug that does something really stupid. If you are really working on a game, there's bound to be a dozen and one things you can do to show your work and prove yourself. One of the best examples of this I've seen from projects I myself have backed on Kickstarter is the War Chief journals from the game Don't Kill Them All, in which the guys made a little post where, rather than treating the skeptics as some other evil that, "Prithee, how dare they doubt me when I've literally shown nothing about the game," the folks at FII-a Productions, an indie studio made up of only like 10 dudes and dudettes, who had immediate doubters due to the way the game was worded being really confusing, had eventually created the War Chief Journal, a set of posts that they pretty recently made, where they heard out the game's early criticisms and both explained in better detail the specifics of the game and its basic gameplay, and made various changes from the criticism, most major of which being the removal of their original character Olive to allow the player to create their own character and act as they please, to ensure that the backers, whom they already had the funding from, felt confident in the game's future. And of the things that were shown, I'd argue that they don't spoil anything at all. Despite showing concept sketches and level art and more, we still don't know anything about the game's story outside of the basic concept and some of the gameplay. But the way that they've gone about it makes me more than confident that this game isn't a scam, is backed by people who are really putting their all into it, and will be a fun and outstanding experience that makes me excited to be one of the backers on the ground floor from back when it popped up on Kickstarter. This is what you want if you want to try and rally funding. FII-a Productions showed that they are good, honest people by not only accepting the criticism with open arms, but also explaining where they were coming from in the first place. Better explaining everything in the first place, of like how the combat works and what this game is to begin with. Explaining what they did wrong in regards to explaining the game. I don't know if non-backers can access any of this, but like I'm scrolling through it right now, or I'm gonna put it on screen. This is what you should be doing if you are making an indie game and want people to support it. And this is afterwards, where they aren't getting any additional money from this. They could have just shut up and not done anything and just had people suffer in silence, or had some people doubt and other people not. But they saw that some amount of people were doubting the project and then made sure those people were comfortable, despite not getting anything extra out of it. And this isn't even the only game studio that does this kind of thing well. Like, they aren't people who do constant TikToks and YouTube shorts or whatever. There are plenty of indie devs online that showed their progress as they were making the game in a way that still made it fulfilling for people when they finally got to play it. If game devs could never show their game when trying to get funding, then no games would be funded. If you genuinely want people to trust you, you need to show them that your game has game. And no amount of showing you just walking around a field crouching will satisfy them. You don't have to put it out exactly, but at the very least, people need to know that there is gameplay there, because all you've shown are pretty rooms and hallways.
But yeah, and even after this video, I'm sure there's going to be someone who's going to try and pick apart things I say and turn it into something it's not.
And that's the video, which I have one last thing to bring up. If you remember that thing I told you to keep in your pocket, you may remember something kind of important that makes the whole I don't care about how much money I get from YouTube shorts thing seem kind of weak. Namely, the fact that he would repost the same exact short with maybe a different caption or song if we're lucky. One of those videos was the exact same, except one of them had the tag queso in it for some reason. What other reason is there to do that other than to expand on revenue? I understand that games take money to make, but given he himself brought up the point of whether he's doing this for the money, this feels like he's outed himself. Spam content like this has no other reason to exist but for profit. Unless you think Daydream fans are just salivating to see, oh my god, a different caption. And even then, many of his current videos are just a collection of old clips posted weeks, months, or ages more ago. As far as the viewers viewers can see, there's little shown progress, and the fact that this is the closest we've gotten to seeing anything about the game, and it's just a player walking on grass, of course people are going to accuse you of doing this for money, when several of your last videos were these.
Here's everything you should know about my... I just added a new moon entity. I'm making a horror game based on... This is how you get early access to our... This is a new horror game coming. I've spent over 10,000 hours. I'm making a horror game based on...
Do you see where we come to that conclusion? Anyways, enough about the response video, as I want to keep going on about that other thing I briefly touched on a bit ago. You know, where I was mentioning that people don't actually have a clear view of what this game even is. Well, I think it's about time to talk about... This is not an easy question to answer, as marketing-wise, Juniper has always been very oddly wary about revealing or showing anything in regards to its actual gameplay, which is a problem, as all the marketing has ever said is it's a liminal horror game that looks really realistic, and textures cool can only get you so far. In fact, Juniper has said way more about what this game isn't than what it is, being very insistent that it's not a mascot horror game, and it's not a friend swap game. So what is it? Well, there's several videos that apparently should tell us all about it. So go ahead, Juniper.
I'm a solo dev working on a horror game based on our childhood nostalgia, and a lot of people have been asking, like, what's the game about, what's the lore, what's the gameplay, how do the entities work, and I hear all of you, and I've been working super hard on this new alpha to show you exactly that.
Wanna know about the gameplay? Play the alpha. How do you play the alpha, you ask? By paying him money. On his Patreon. His response to people wanting to ask what the game is about before they buy it is to tell them to buy it. You know, that kind of reminds me of a particular pandemic era situation that went super viral, where a person's entire marketing was refusing to say what the product tasted like, and then telling anyone who asked that they should buy it. Just give me this sort of deja vu. Juniper, am I gonna get botulism if I play this game? You can tell me. Next short.
So this video is going to be a little bit longer than the other ones because I just want to answer a question, so bear with me. And the question that I know all of you guys are asking is, what is Daydream about? What am I going to do? Because I've only shown entities and clips about the game and kind of given you an idea of what the vibes are going to be.
Okay, great. Glad we're on the same page. What's the game about, Juniper?
And I've been holding so much back because I really want to show you everything that we're putting into this game. With the whole multiplayer, it's going to be definitely new, it's going to be different. It scares me a little bit because the state of liminal games right now are very copy and paste and very bland, and I'm nervous that this will be too different for people.
Okay, great. So you're gonna let us know a little bit so you can vibe check and feel a bit less wary. That's cool. What's the game about, Juniper?
But we've just been fleshing out the idea of what you're going to do in the game and different vibes, because we're balancing a bunch of different aesthetics and everything.
What's the game about, Juniper?
And today I got off a call talking about the entities because I had always had it in my heart to take it a step up.
Oh, god damn it, you're adding another entity. Juniper!
The next entity that comes out is going to be so insane that I am really nervous about, because it is going to be true horror game, like true terror. Because right now it is a bit, not poppy playtime, but it is like, oh, you look at my entities. They're not really scary. They're kind of dreamcore whimsical. And I have always been an advocate for like real horror and making you scared without having to do basic jump scares, because that's what I want to do.
Hey, focus. What's the game about?
And I just want to kind of say that I'm nervous, but I'm really excited because this is going to be really different than a lot of the liminal or dreamcore games that you've played.
What's the game about? Juniper! So basically, he opens implying that he's gonna answer those questions about what the game is, what it's about, and doesn't. Instead, going on and on about how it's gonna be so different, guys. In fact, I'm scared it's gonna be too different. Like they're holding the carrot on a string so you watch the whole short. I feel like anybody that likes this game only really likes the idea of Dreamcore, or they like the designs and don't know they aren't his. Because quite literally, what else can you like about this game in a general sense? Graphics and realistic textures aren't gonna matter much if the game's gameplay loop sucks or you can't run it. Ask every failed Ubisoft game.
What is Daydream about? What are you gonna do in the game? A lot of people have been asking this question. I'm here to finally answer it.
Finally! Fantastic! Great. What are we doing in the game?
In Daydream, you and your friends play as kids who discovered strange liminal spaces hidden in plain sight. They're not supposed to be there, but for their own reasons, they just keep going back. Some want to prove that the monsters really do exist, and some feel weirdly connected to these places. There's even characters that aren't going to say where they go at all. In-game, you'll swap between different goals each run. The deeper you go, the more Dreamcore and surreal it gets. And each level brings new objectives, harder challenges, smarter entities that are even more grotesque than the last ones. All while using nostalgic items and exploring nostalgic places.
Okay, I showed a lot of that because I wanted to make sure that you took it all in at once. Now, upon hearing that description of the game, tell me, what's the game about? Yeah, I thought so. If you actually think about it for a second or two, the words that he is saying are pretty much just as vague as all the other explanations.
In-game, you'll swap between different goals each run.
You do different things throughout the game.
The deeper you go, the more Dreamcore and surreal it gets.
There are different Dreamcore aesthetics.
And each level brings new objectives, harder challenges, smarter entities that are even more grotesque than the last one.
The game, get this, has difficulty.
All while using nostalgic items and exploring nostalgic places.
You use items in levels.
There will be calm spots, dreamy areas, and strange moments of peace in between the chaos.
The game will have safe areas sometimes. And this is the most detailed we've ever gotten of what this game is about. The only other thing we know about this game is that it's going to have multiplayer as an option, maybe. Because on Patreon, he apparently hasn't nailed that idea down either. In fact, this is one of the few posts you can look at even if you're not a patron. So in case you want to fact check me, it's under the post Big Direction Change Discussion, Daydream Single Player versus Multiplayer. In this document, Juniper explains that they've been having a lot of debates about Daydream, and despite being 9 months in development, is unsure as to whether Daydream should be a single player or multiplayer game, despite it having been planned to be multiplayer from the beginning, claiming that even though multiplayer was the original plan, that doing so would probably take an extra 1.5 years to get done, only days after showing a successful multiplayer stress test. The reason I bring this up is because this is a pretty big red flag for the project, because this indicates, at least to me, that this game has next to no foundation. Switching a game from single player focused to multiplayer focused or the other way around is a massive change. Single player versus multiplayer is a very foundational thing that you build the rest of the game around, and the fact that not even that has been figured out yet should concern you. Now obviously there are games out there with multiplayer and single player, but most of these games have to be simplistic in their game design, or they're carefully thought it through, and depending on if it started out as single player or multiplayer first, either have major balancing fixes, changes, or just plain AI companions so it's possible for one, or have checks in place so that everyone can experience it for two, like when games will force the characters to be in the same room and such. I mean, just think of your favorite game right now, and imagine for a second if tomorrow they announced, we're gonna make it multiplayer, guys, and immediately shoved in multiplayer, or if it is multiplayer, we're gonna actually make the single player now and made it single player. That would not be an instant switch. That's not something you can easily decide like a whole year into the project, like this one. But Daydream and the developer behind it don't seem like the type that could pull it off from what we've seen. And the fact that this conversation is even happening means that the game is still on the foundational thinking grounds and is getting overloaded with ideas and bloat way too early, or worse, the foundation was never set up at all. Which, given the fact that we again have yet to see anything other than the character being able to make basic movements, could honestly be either one. But unfortunately, this isn't even the only game we need to talk about today. FRUTIGER AERO originally began as a level of Daydream that he showed off wandering around in this video, FRUTIGER AERO Yes or No. The level was given massive amounts of positive support from fans, thinking the level would be a great and pretty addition to this game. Unfortunately, the love of this level was so enormous that it completely derailed the game's development, as Juniper quickly decided to sever the game from Daydream and make it its own separate game, simply titled FRUTIGER AERO, and quickly paying the $100 it cost to make a new Steam page, and beginning to quickly advertise it as the first ever FRUTIGER AERO game. And despite this only being an idea for a few days, he quickly would claim his first short title, new title is being released before Daydream. He'd also quickly whip up a brand new map for it as well, a more ocean-themed one, and started doing the comment-based question shorts we're used to, in which because some of these videos don't mention it being a new game, many people would quickly become confused. This looks great for Daydream. Back in my day, this used to be a Daydream channel. It is. This is Daydream. Is this a map for Daydream, or is this a separate game? Daydream! Heart emoji, silly ticking tongue out emoji. Either way though, he had suddenly shifted for a while onto working on this game, of which he used time that could have been used for Daydream, and likely used funding from patrons expecting to fund the development of his other game, now being funneled to this one. That $100 fee had to come from somewhere, right? Plus, we're on maps 4 and 5 now. In fact, as of writing this, he has put up 2 alphas of the FRUTIGER AERO game so far, and apparently has added character customization sometime after. And according to the Steam page, the final game plans on being a co-op puzzle game. But can you blame him for suddenly shifting projects? I mean, after all, you heard the man. He needs to be quick if he wants to be the first person to make a FRUTIGER AERO game, I hear you saying.
Apparently, it is the first ever FRUTIGER AERO game. At first, I was like, this looks cool, but what do you actually do? And apparently, it is a cozy 2-player puzzle adventure setting with nostalgic future where you're promised by You can also unlock cosmetics and vibe solo with a friend in a world made to ease your mind. So let me know what you think about the first ever FRUTIGER AERO game.
Well, unfortunately, he's gonna need to speed up a bit if he wants to be the first game with a FRUTIGER AERO aesthetic, because he's years late. He's so late, in fact, that there's an entire forum dedicated to finding games with the aesthetic. But even without that, a quick Google search will net you quite a few games, whether you exclude the games of that era or not. In fact, here are several games that have been made since 2020 or sooner. XIII, VIII-a, Don't Lose Your Head, 1% of Germs. I've seen some people consider Lunistis and Subnautica to be of this aesthetic. Kitten Burst. To some extent, Kilaflow, a game I personally supported on Kickstarter, has some levels that are pretty close to this aesthetic as well. And that's with me picking recent titles only. He kinda just threw out this claim without the most mild of Google debunking, which might be because of the fact that he did a similar marketing claim with Daydream and got away with it. As with Daydream, he's gone on constant record to claim that he's making the first ever liminal horror game with realistic graphics. A statement much easier to get away with because realistic can mean a lot of things. So if you point out one example that is realistic, he can just move the goalpost by saying it's not realistic enough. Otherwise, you and I both know there are obviously games of that exact description all throughout Steam, mainly in part due to Unreal giving really good tools to make realistic games on their platform. Pretty much any Backrooms game that is liked is in this category of real footage-esque games. Escape the Backrooms being my immediate thought. But maybe that doesn't count, you know? I mean, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't a square and all of that. Maybe Backrooms games don't get to count as liminal even though they have liminal spaces, right? So let's just go ahead and look up liminal game. Okay. Liminal exit, superliminal, dreamcore, pools, disminal, dream logic, liminal shift, my last appointment, liminal dimension, liminal state, the lost apartment, liminal leap chapters 1 and 2, Tenchi, my happy place. Are you getting my point yet? Pretty much everything this concept was sold on was a lie. Okay, maybe I'm being aggressive with that, but when you make a claim that you are the first one to do a thing and can't be arsed to check, then I am surprised it took this long for someone to do basic research on you and your game. Either you are stupid or you are lying. There isn't an alternative. Either you decide to claim that you were the first to make a game like this several times and never checked for the past over 9 months if someone else had for 2 separate games, or you knew that and chose to do it anyways because you knew nobody would fact check you. FRUTIGER AERO also, as I mentioned earlier, has its own Steam page. In fact, thanks to it, we know more about FRUTIGER AERO than we do about Daydream. Apparently it's going to be a cozy 2-player puzzle game and is somehow going to be pumped out by the end of this year, according to Juniper. Either way though, I was looking at both of these Steam pages and at some point I noticed something kind of weird. Mainly that although FRUTIGER AERO and Daydream are both made by Juniper Studios, they're both capitalized differently for some reason, which I quickly found out was because they are in completely separate accounts. For whatever reason, although marketing them together, he doesn't want FRUTIGER AERO on the same account as Daydream. To my knowledge, he had to create 2 separate Steamworks accounts that were both verified and had to fill out quite a few things to make these 2 separate accounts. So that's a weird amount of effort to make a separate account for Daydream that has the exact same studio name. So I decided to look at these 2 accounts and quickly found that Juniper has actually made another game before either of these games, called Animal Tracker. Now, don't take this the wrong way, but the first odd thing I noticed about this game was the positive reviews. Not because the game sucks, even though kind of does a little, but more because of some of them seeming very bot-like. Coming from accounts that apparently review thousands more games than they own, give a nothing review that's the same across all games they review, that being a sun emoji and a blank review respectively, and apparently having played the game for 10 hours, which I find odd simply because from playing it, I'm fairly certain that if you wanted to 100% the game, it'd only take like 2 to 3 hours tops. There's also this positive review, quote unquote, which is pretty blatantly sarcastic, saying that's a free vomit session for people with motion sickness. Of the 10 reviewers, 5 people found this review helpful. I hope that tells you about the game. Now, something I should mention right away is that Animal Tracker is a free game. Some people I'm sure would argue that I shouldn't talk about or criticize this game because of that. But the thing is, Juniper has been very closed off about anything in regards to his game, which leads to this being the only place around that you can even glimpse at his abilities as a coder. I mean, this was made 2024. This is all we have to go off of in regards to what a quality Juniper Studios approved product is. Oh yeah, by the way, on Juniper's Discord, there's this one guy that found the game and wanted to ask about it, and then everyone from the Discord just started gaslighting the hell out of him, saying that even though you can find the game by clicking on his account, that's not actually his, and that it just popped up because the names are similar. Ah yes, FRUTIGER AERO? Animal Tracker. Ah, they sound almost identical. I swear I'm not saying the same word, guys. I just want to mention it because I found it funny that one guy found this before me like 2 months ago, and of all the people, it's the guy that paid $80 for the Carl tier on the month that he paid for it, and he unknowingly found one of the giant conspiracy points I'm going to be talking about. Just absolute cinema. Better than Hollywood. Oh my god. So what is it? This game is the equivalent of when you pick up a rock and there's a bunch of bugs underneath it, as in there are way too many bugs. You don't have to try hard to find one. If you try to do that FNAF security breach challenge where you reset every single time you see a bug, you would only last like a few seconds every reset, because it's hard not to accidentally clip your camera through the map. In fact, even the trailer video has it happen. You may also notice that the trailer looks significantly better with such luxuries as grass. That is because the only change between the beta when the developer took the screenshots and when it was uploaded as a full game is that he mowed the lawn, and one of the screenshots where it said the game was a beta was changed. Badly, because it's improperly set and goes off the screen. Just like later on in Juniper's Daydream betas. We give him like a whole year and he still doesn't know how to fix that, didn't look up a tutorial or anything. Okay. The game itself tries to be kind of like Pokemon Snap, which is a nice idea. However, even the foundation just barely works. I quickly learned that if you want an image to count, you need to spam click the camera button as hard as you can. The camera button that, mind you, saves every single image you take as a PNG on your computer. Oh yeah, and if you click super fast while trying to take these photos, you can also fly. Even then though, taking photos rarely counts as is, often never counting photos for research objectives. Even when a photo objective and a research objective are the exact same thing. I only ever got the research objectives to work once or twice total, even with the spam clicking. And with the photo objectives being like once in every 3 attempts actually counting, I had a situation where it wanted me to take a photo of a sleeping capybara. I found one and took a photo, and it didn't count, because that only counts as a picture of a sleeping capybara next to a boulder, because apparently those are completely different forms of sleep. I feel like the only thing that's mildly okay is the artwork of the 2D sprites, as everything else is inconsistent to a near comical degree, such as having a game about exploring cliffs in which you have fall damage that almost always instantly kills you, which not only encourages you to not go near the scary cliffs, but it also means that if you fail a single jump in this platformer exploring game, that you have to redo the entire thing from the beginning. Even things as basic as death lack consistency, as in some areas you can walk on water and have to in order to get all the photos you need, while in other sections, water instantly kills you, with no pre-warning. There's this beach area I tried to go to several times, you know, because it's a game about exploring and finding animals, before realizing that the entire beach area is just a giant kill zone, and you're not actually supposed to go there. Pretty bad for a game all about exploration to be not clear about where you can and can't go. Probably one of the worst, most immersion-breaking things to have wrong in this kind of game. And that's not even touching the worst problem of them all. You see, you have to do these 3D platforming sections high up in the air, with the worst camera I've experienced in the longest time since one of the other Juniper games. The camera has incredibly awful sensitivity to the point that even a nudge is far too much, and you'll have to control this so you jump in the right direction onto tiny clouds that move, all while trying not to fall and lose all of your progress. Because remember, any fall damage equals death. I did try to fix this in the settings, but it didn't make much of a difference, and also I learned the hard way that they have the buttons set up in such a way that when you're closing out of the game, if you're too fast when clicking, it will hard boot you to the desktop because the quit button is on the exact same layer as the close button when you exit out of the settings menu. Peak design right there. It tries to help you stop playing as soon as possible. Oh yeah, and a thing I forgot to mention in the script itself. You have to manually save, so I hope you didn't accidentally alter the settings too fast and quit out of the game on accident, because I'm sorry to say you might have lost all your progress. Now, I only played the game for about an hour, but I had almost completed the Fluffy Bar section to its entirety, and there only seemed to be 3 creatures, one of which I couldn't find because I believe it needs the glider from the shop in order to find them, and this game is so buggy and laggy that I don't want to have to play this for longer than I need to. All I wanted to do was go in as far as it took for me to see if the beta text was still in there. Pretty much this game, which from my perspective at the time seemed to also have the intention of being updated later on, never was. And although Juniper may have changed since then, this is quite literally the only thing we have to go off of in regards to his coding ability, which makes optimization like 10 times more of a concern than I thought it was. So why? Why was the game left in this state? So I looked into it, and thanks to that one question, I opened up not a rabbit hole, but a rabbit Mariana's Trench, because I was constantly drowning in more information than I realistically could ever cover. So I'm gonna try and cover the basics, but know that there's a lot here that I'm having to sort through. It's time to tell the interesting story about Juniper Studios. See, Juniper Studios was a studio made for a thing called Indie Games Academy, a hands-on game development program meant to teach you how to excel in like the studio environment of gaming, though it didn't originate as Juniper Studios, as originally the group was called Team Monk, though they changed names right at the end of their time there, likely in hopes of continuing to work together. However, whatever happened, presumably whatever happened to Ammo Tracker, it fell through and they split up, each of whom are now working on their own projects. The lead art designer even worked with like Starbucks and stuff. Pretty cool. The story behind their new name has to do with another game they made called Soup Quest, which was a small platformer game for a game jam. The lead art designer created this mouse character known as Juniper, and the rest of the studio seemingly became so attached with the little guy that they decided to make it the new mascot of their studio. We know all this because of the Twitter page that announced this decision, as well as the fact that all of the Team Monk websites now lead to Juniper Studios. Now, the major question I had from this is, firstly, why does Juniper have the Animal Tracker Steam page? Why did he take the name with him after leaving, as from my research, none of the original people are involved in this current game? And of course, who was he in the group? And did he make any other game? Which all of these questions are answered through the help of Animal Tracker. Now, originally, I thought he was the director because that would explain him taking the studio name, but he is surprisingly one of the actual working team members. I'm gonna try and not give away too many details on who specifically he is so he doesn't get hunted down, so I'll be nicknaming him Tails because I really want to get the Sonic Generations remake. It's not even funny. Like, I am so playing it after this video is over. I want to feel the nostalgia again. Sonic Generations was my childhood game, man. Anyways, Tails was one of the people in this team, but for a long while, I was unsure of specifically who. We know that he is male, worked on at the very minimum this game, and had to be one of the main people to have been the one to take that Steam page. Now, something I hadn't gotten to mention yet was that Animal Tracker was their final project, made at the very end of their time at the Indie Game Academy. This was basically their final, in which they had to pitch an actual genuine game project while a panel of judges who've actually worked in the industry gives them advice on how to proceed should they continue with it. The Indie Game Academy has several social media, including a YouTube where they occasionally post their lectures, podcasts, or some of the classes they do. And while they had put several of their past live streams of this, the event I'm referring to being called Pitch Night, this was one of the few that they did not seem to have live, as I kept going through and struggled to find a glimpse of this game. I found an Eventbrite page, but seeing as I wasn't around when they did it, I couldn't pay to attend and thus had no access. I was able to find several other things though, including several past builds of the game, including the Pitch Night demo itself, which is identical to the current Animal Tracker build, which tells me that all Tails changed was that one line of text before slapping it on Steam, and multiple old prototypes. On the LinkedIn of the Indie Games Academy, I at some point realized that they streamed them directly on there. Though my hours and hours of scrolling, because the only way I can actually filter through them is by going by most recent and then scrolling all the way down, all that scrolling led to nothing but disappointment, okay? It was a sad sight. The only thing I did find being this small clip they made showing, wouldn't you know it, Team Monk presenting a small bit of the Animal Tracker game and their thoughts during development. A clip which had no audio. Now, the whole reason I wanted this so badly is to identify and figure out which team member they are, or more specifically, make sure I wasn't incorrect with my assessment and possibly talk about the wrong guy. So after having searched across the entirety of the Indie Game Academy's pages, I got desperate and shot off one last Hail Mary, not expecting a whole lot from it, right? Now, I should also mention I was a little scared that they wouldn't give me a response at all, so I was pretty vague about what the video was actually about, and kinda pulled a Juniper here by just saying I was working on a video about Juniper Studios and wanted to talk about them due to their recent game Kickstarter to delve into the studio's much older, earlier games and how they were made, before pointing out specific links and pleading with them to check on the off chance they still had this nearly year-old live stream on their files. I mean, again, like, nothing I said was technically incorrect, but I was, like, so vague. So honestly, this alone might make me a tiny bit of a hypocrite. But 2 weeks later, I replied again, seeing as I didn't get an answer. At this point, I didn't expect anything to come of it, given after 2 weeks, they didn't respond. I doubt they would here, right? And then they did. Hello, from the marketing team here. I was about to message you that unfortunately we weren't able to find the videos because neither I nor had the recording anywhere, and because this was the last pitch night we did before we started streaming them all here, there was no chance for us to have it. But as I was writing that email, I remembered that Canva is the best thing ever and it saves old files like an antiquarian. And thankfully, it was there. Holy shit. We got him. And sure enough, clicking on the file he sent me led to the unedited Animal Tracker section of the livestream. But alongside it was a rather bittersweet message. Please give our best wishes to the Juniper Studios team. Team Monk is in our hearts still, Heart. We'd be 100% happy to host them in our Discord server for a podcast episode or any other way we can help with visibility for their Kickstarter. Because obviously they don't know about any of the research I've done to get here, and the fact that they don't know that Juniper Studios is more or less a puppeted corpse of its former self, wearing the name but not the inner people who originally made it, save for the one. This honestly hurt my heart to read, because the Indie Game Academy obviously wants to make good on its teachings and put out good developers in the world. In fact, all of the games related to the Indie Game Academy has like proper credit and shows what assets they use and fantastic stuff, right? And I don't think they could have ever anticipated that one of their previous people went into the games industry only to throw out all of their teachings to the wayside. So I just want to clarify for certain that the Indie Games Academy did no wrong in this. Like, they have little to do with this other than being partially involved with the making of Juniper and Monk Studio in the first place, and thanks to them we know one thing. This. I want you to take a little listen to this clip.
Towards small floating rocks located around the island.
Notice anything familiar? How about if we put them side by side?
For the player to follow along with and really immerse themselves into.
I was like, I don't think I can continue this for the next 2 years after the game's out.
This is our guy. We got him! We got him! And thanks to this, I was able to find even more. And back in the original cut of this section, because I had to completely rewrite this. I had mentioned the fact that he was one of the few people to include Juniper Studios in their LinkedIn, even adding the mouse logo, though originally I wrote it off because his profile was marked open for work, and would occasionally do little test projects to learn Unreal better for a few days every like 3 to 4 months. So I'd assumed that because he was open for work, that meant he probably wasn't working on anything. But from all the different things I've found, and of course, the voices, I think it's pretty safe to say that this is our guy, but for some reason, he's not putting it on his LinkedIn. I wonder why! However, Tails also has a portfolio page which mentions that he ran a mock studio called Juniper Studios. If he ran it, he probably ran the accounts too, which is why he still has the name, has the Steam page, and has the old Animal Tracker game on his account. And of course, has the logo as far back as his first ever short uploaded onto the YouTube channel. Though even without this, there are several smaller things that connect the two, such as one of the super old videos on Juniper's channel being this anime animation he did of Naruto vs. Genji. Whereas on Tails' Instagram and Twitter, we know that he is a massive Naruto fan, even having took a selfie with the Naruto English dub voice actor, and his Twitter having motivational Naruto quotes as the profile picture and the image of Sasuke on his banner. There's also just little things I've learned are his MO as of this point, as after playing through the newest demo and the past ones, he's very much a hands-off developer in that he leaves no controls in the game, and you have to hunt around in the text area of wherever you got the game, because if you got stuck, turns out in the controls of the game there was secretly a shuriken button you were never told about. And of course, when there is text, it's like oftentimes really poorly cropped or not centered properly, like I mentioned earlier with Ammo Tracker versus the recent demo beta thing. They also seem to type strikingly similar when replying to people in the comments, and as it were, has also in the past made a Dream-based game. It's not like Dream Core, though unfortunately I couldn't get very far because not only did it seemingly have the awful camera sensitivity and platforming of Ammo Tracker, but this was the game that I was talking about earlier that I was saying has the worst camera I have ever seen, because it has just this sickening, constant, like, motion blur, and the controls are just so bad and buggy. I couldn't even pass the tutorial, and I couldn't get far in the actual game itself. It's either a skill issue, or this is meant to be like a rage game, or maybe I just didn't try hard enough and I'm just a massive baby. Just look at the footage, man. Look at this. This is bad. I feel mean talking like this about like what are a developer's really early games. Like, come on. Like, he used to have like a video on Vimeo, which he'd post all the gameplays of his games in the past onto, but he removed it for some reason, so now I'm pretty sure that nobody will ever see the end of this game, because my god. As for Tails' other games, he also made this. Yeah, I wasn't able to make it far in this one either. I later learned that you can shoot shurikens, which you can see me doing in the footage, but it's very tight control-wise, and I thought that this katana was like a power-up due to the way it was waggling. It was not. There's this pixel game for another game jam, though there's nothing particularly noteworthy here other than some funny glitches here or there. Yeah, you go, man. You're doing great, honey. There's this test gun game that was really weird because it seems to have like a built-in controller drift for some reason. So when I had my controller plugged in, I booted up the game and it kept doing this. So I unplugged my controller worried that I was getting the fabled Joy-Con drift. But to my surprise, it continued drifting even when it wasn't plugged in anymore. When we're starting with just a mouse though, it doesn't have this, so I can only guess that when testing, Tails had a controller with controller drift, made some changes to counteract the drift on their controller, but then forgot to remove it when they launched the game. The game has you going around shooting these robots and has a really weird ammo system where you get extra ammo packets that require you to go and find the reload button to add the new ammo to the total. This doesn't sound odd until you realize it's completely separate to the regular ammo, and it doesn't tell you what the reload button is. It just says to use the reload button on your designated device, which, spoilers, it is an R. So when I only had one bullet remaining and 25 extra ammo, I then tried to press every single button on my keyboard individually, which resulted in me finding this. I got very confused, naturally, before eventually I discovered that N is the automatically pop up the you beat the game screen button for some reason. Like, there aren't any other levels, so I don't fully see what this would be testing other than whether the retry button works, so that's all we have from the Tails side of the story. And in fact, that's a large chunk of the things to talk about here, save for one thing. So with that being said, I think it's time we get into the Patreon. Now this is the part of the video where I'm going to actually go into the Patreon and 1.2, 1.3, and recent Kickstarter demo that released during the production of this video. After all, in the past he's mentioned that if you want to know what the game is about, just play the alpha. And as of right now, you can do that for just $1. Now I've talked a little about their Patreon between the whole multiplayer single player post and the general indecisiveness votes between the most basic creative decisions, but there was a post that I found pretty interesting that I want to talk about. Under Daydream update, where production is at and what to expect, Juniper Juniper goes over the current team of the project, which is a little surprising, given how often he calls himself not an indie developer, but a solo developer.
I'm a solo dev and don't have much funding. I'm a solo dev.
You as a solo dev.
I'm a solo dev. I'm a solo dev. As a solo dev for my Dreamcore horror game.
Either way though, he made a post about all the people on his team right now. A team which he sometimes alludes to, but always calls a small team, and again, seems to fear giving them any real credit, not even giving them credit in this very post where he mentions these roles. Here he, who I should again remind you claims he only makes $400 and makes no money, has on board a lead horror concept artist, a player animator, a 3D modeler, 3 composers, a main coder, a rigger, an entity team of 3 to 4 people, and lastly, he himself, of whom does, and I quote, the entire project story and lore, plus handling realism, lighting, textures, optimization, and creative direction, which sounds like a lot, but seemingly boils down to just being the project manager, writer, and realistic texture boy. But those aren't all the jobs he has, as when I was put in the Discord automatically due to my Patreon and Discord being linked, I was bombarded pretty consistently with pings, as he likes to at everyone on his Discord of people who pay him money to ask them for new hires, and during which he sought out a lot of other jobs, and also revealed a few others that he didn't mention on that post, namely his 10 Blender artists that he supposedly already has in his post wanting more. But he really is doing so much. Surely splitting up that nearly 2K, he can hire all 22 confirmed jobs that he's claimed, because surely they aren't all free labor, even though none of the posts confirm any amount of payment, and the only one he's ever talked about paying is his modeler, whom he constantly complains about being super expensive in the same video where he claims that he makes no money. I know I can't confirm it, but like I'm 80% certain that they're mostly unpaid workers, because otherwise, Juniper, do you make no money like you claim? Or do you actually pay the people carrying Daydream on their backs? Though of the few things he claims to do, I initially found it pretty interesting that he doesn't even list himself as a coder, which is probably why he has such a hard time showing or explaining any of the code, because from this I can only assume it mostly isn't made by him, if at all. In fact, the most recent beta, as of writing, wasn't even exported and put into Google Drive by him, as seen by the email associated with it. This was quickly remedied, as the next day he silently fixed it, importing his own copy of the export and then replacing the link. There are no other changes to the beta. It is the exact same one. But this led to me finding one of the names of the actual coders and concept artists that I believe deserve some shred of credit. So seeing as he keeps conveniently forgetting to credit the people that actually keep his project alive, allow me to. This is iPatch012, a game designer and concept artist working on the Daydream team, and the person who gave the original build of the recent October Daydream demo. And I know why he doesn't like to credit, or mention anything about who's part of this team, or how many are part of his team, or how much money he makes. It's because it would shatter the whole image he's built up about being some ooh-woo scrappy solo indie developer, and people would start questioning why he's constantly outsourcing everything to his fans. Him being an indie developer is his only shield currently. His image up until this point has relied on the idea that he does everything himself, save for a few teensy tiny itty bitty things that he's so graciously allowing you to name a guy or two. That is not true, and it hasn't been for a long time, if at all. But past him not even considering himself a coder, I quickly found it even more interesting that it seems like he's trying pretty hard to find people to replace what little work he does claim to do. He's a project manager, but he wants 2 other project managers on. He's a writer, but he wants 3 to 4 creative developers to do all the puzzles and lore for him. He does the realistic Blender stuff, but has 10 Blender artists and seems to think that isn't enough. Again, stating he wants significantly more. By the way, I popped in to add, I for a second thought that like maybe he does the textures and that's like his only thing. Like other people do the Blender stuff and he does the textures, right? So in case you thought that, I just wanted to say that 13 minutes ago, as of adding this little tidbit, he just pinged everyone trying to find a UV unwrapper that's skilled in Substance Painter. He actually confirms payment on this one, likely because the whole concept depends on its realism, but yeah, I genuinely don't know what he does. Honestly, at this point, I would not be surprised if he also put up a position for social media manager, so he doesn't have to type the words he's saying either. Actually, he may have already in some parts, given that, at least with things like this post for hiring a writer in the Daydream universe, and this FRUTIGER AERO description for the Steam page, seem to have some, like, suspicious stuff that makes me kind of feel like it's AI. Obviously, I can't determine it 100%, but he talks way different if you compare his job listing he definitely wrote just now to the GPT suspected one. And the weird spacing and use of random emojis is pretty common with ChatGPT, especially if you're literally just copy-pasting with no changes. And also the FRUTIGER AERO description has the same weird spacing, randomly changing whether the headers are or are not blue, and having really weird language, namely touting a vibrant, bubbly world of glowing glass, soft gradients, and floating UI, which not only sounds like GPT vomit, but also makes no sense if you think about it for even a second, and look at the screenshot directly below it. You can't blame the game apparently being an online PvP on the AI though. That's all just Juniper being Juniper, for some reason marking it like that. Still don't know why. But on top of all of those things, he also wants a Blender level designer, a 2D character artist, of which is outright stated to be unpaid, 1 to 2 additional composers, and most recently, he's been begging for an animator for quite some time, which he finally got, and gleefully states that animation work has officially started for all entities.
That's too much work, and I'm down there munching away.
Which, even for a paid animator, that is quite a lot of weight for one person, given how many entities are in this game, if you all remember. Should he get all the jobs he wants hired on, that brings our quote-unquote small team
I am a solo dev, so I'm doing all this by myself, along with a really small team.
up to 28 members, not counting FRUTIGER AERO, of which payment varies by their rates and experience, which, hi, person who was a professional YouTube editor for a few years, this isn't just a Juniper thing, this is to get you to lowball yourself so you can say that you worked for a YouTuber with big number. Him mentioning the fact that it could be paid or unpaid is so that you lowball yourself so that he can then lowball you lower than that. I guarantee you that there are some desperate editors out there that probably offered themselves up for like $20 as a pocket lint, or worse, completely free. The economy is hard out there, man. Don't take the deal. Larger YouTubers do this all the time. It's never worth it. And I'm not just saying professional YouTube editor because I own a YouTube channel. I mean that as in, like, I started working with other YouTubers when I was like 16. I'm 20 now, so like, I've worked with some boys. I'll probably show some stuff on screen. Moopsin is like the only good larger YouTuber when it comes to this kind of thing. I worked with a YouTuber with like 8 million subscribers and it was awful, and they used the exact same language. Do not lowball yourself. I know you have self-esteem issues, whatever little editors out there, just do not take it. Do not take the bait. You are worth more than you think you are. Sorry, tangent over. Speaking of not worth it, let's take a closer little look-see at that FRUTIGER AERO position meant to take over the project. Quote, I'm looking for a reliable partner to help this game moving forward. I'll still be involved as the creative director to guide the vision, but you'll handle most of the execution and help with leading the project. Parentheses, it's not overwhelming. Now, I'm glad you felt the need to mention that after explicitly saying that they'd handle most of the execution of the project that, as of right now, is just a few maps and a character customization screen, and is meant to be finished this December. As Juniper claimed that this game would be done in Q4 of 2025, the levels as of right now are just pretty and don't have any actual puzzles that the game is supposed to revolve around. And from the post, we can tell that they are also supposed to be doing lots of the coding in the project, which from the wording here and him leaving out the ever-looming impossible deadline he gave, it feels like this is more of an opening for a fall guy, of whom he can blame if anybody asks about why it isn't out yet, or should it ever release, why it isn't anything like what he built it up to be, and kept typing up before anything was done. Or if on the off chance he hires a coding god, show all of their work and then imply that it's his, like he's been doing with other people for the past, like, year. Though in more important news, there's 2 alphas for FRUTIGER AERO and 3 for Daydream. 2 back when I first scripted this section, and so I'll be playing each of them one at a time so you don't have to. First being FRUTIGER AERO, seeing as they're just maps right now. But I wanted to bring up a certain little TikTok that they made about the game. Oh yeah, and these next sections on the FRUTIGER AERO demos and the Daydream demos were made back before this recent one here in October, so I figure I'm not gonna like completely re-record all of the FRUTIGER AERO and the 2 Daydream demo sections, seeing as those ones are still completely accurate regardless of the new demo. So if I only reference like 2 demos in regards to Daydream, that's why. So I should clarify, I am gonna talk about the alpha, it's just after 1.2 and 1.3. Alright, back to old me again. 2 months ago, they made a video in response to another skeptic in which they explicitly say that the game is super optimized and that you don't need a supercomputer to run it.
Proof my FRUTIGER AERO game really looks this good in game. This is a real game in development with a small team. Everything is optimized, you don't need a supercomputer to run it. Our Steam page just got listed, go wishlist on Steam today.
Now, originally I was gonna use my other, way crazier computer to check this out, but the problem is that its motherboard died a good while back, and ever since I got it fixed by Dell, it blue screens whenever I close the lid, so I rarely use it. But according to Juniper, I should be perfectly good to go to use my Flex i5 IdeaPad from Lenovo that's been my ride or die and can handle most games like a champ. So let's boot up the game and compare. Booting it up, the first thing I notice is Windows Defender popping up to protect me from running it. Okay, whatever, it's a new game, ignore. Okay, that doesn't look intentional. Using my average computer that I am currently using for editing right now, I was quick to notice that the test 1 of FRUTIGER AERO was completely broken, as apparently the lighting system broke or unbuilt. I'm not as familiar with Unreal, but given testing on my much better computer worked, I can only assume that that snide "you don't need a supercomputer" comment isn't nearly as true as he implied it to be 2 months ago. Back to the actual thing though, looking around in the dark, the only things I could see were the reflection of the bubbles, a few select images, and a handful of reflections on the ceiling. And so I quickly decided that my computer can't run this and decided to close out the game. Unfortunately, the escape button did nothing, and I quickly realized the only way you can quit out of the game is by opening up Task Manager and killing the program. Epic! Cool! Overall, my Alienware, though, it functioned a lot better and was actually able to see. Though even with this, I noticed that's not nearly as crazy realistic as he shows in his videos, including the one where he claims that smaller computers can run it, which strongly implies that you can run it with it looking this good and realistic without a supercomputer. Especially given this comment was made 2 months back, while this alpha was made just 12 days ago. The test is just a room that you can't do much in with some janky steps and far more steps that you can't go to. So I ended it there, having to Task Manager out once again. Test 2 was actually able to run on my average computer. Although it looked weird and gray for a few seconds, it quickly snapped into place. The place looks nice, but again, not nearly as good as my Alienware, and definitely not as good as the footage seems on YouTube. I went over to this seahorse and clicked on it, causing it to seemingly disappear. What I would later realize is that grabbing any object that isn't a ball, force pushes it 3 feet away like it's trying to keep its social distance. If you jump on this ball, it turns into a red clickbait arrow, which I found kind of fun. And also they left this watermark in. I get it. It's exclusive test build, it's not gonna be perfect. Not intended to be seen by the majority of people anyways. You can most see the difference in visual quality between the two computers when looking at these metallic balls. On my Lenovo ThinkPad, it just looks like it's a metallic ball, reflecting the skybox unless you put it directly next to one of the other objects in the environment. On the Alienware, the environment looks softer and almost baked. And looking at the metallic balls, they almost seem fuzzy and blurring, even when reflecting things. It's like if you put like a circular sensor blur in the center of it. Another easy see of this is the ocean. See the comparison for yourself. I'll split the screen here for a few seconds. And with that, I was thoroughly finished with this room, stared longingly at the dolphin PNG, and once again Task Managered out of there. So if that's FRUTIGER AERO, then what about our main event, right? What about Daydream? I'm gonna go to the order that I went through these, so we're gonna start with the newer build of 3.1. It opens promisingly enough. We have a few buttons here that don't do anything quite yet. There's our friendly sun over yonder, likely pondering its fab asset existence. We do oddly see this demon guy, which was used way in the beginning and scrapped a long time ago, which makes me wonder if he isn't actually scrapped. We have a working settings menu and of course a play button where we can hop into the game. The first thing I noticed is that the graphics actually do look as advertised, much closer than FRUTIGER was marketing-wise, though again this is on max settings with a supercomputer, so that could be different for the average player. I won't go over the difference between the average computer and not, like earlier, too much, but going on that computer, this is how it runs the lowest possible setting. And this is just a tree, grass, and a building in the distance. If graphics are the only thing that you pitch your game on, the wide majority of people will not be able to play it. They skinned the sun! And as a reminder, this is how it runs Ori Definitive Edition, a game that is just as visually stunning in my opinion. My computer is pretty good all things considered, so I do worry that the main point about this game is going to just lock out 90% of people, meaning most people that donate their money to this game will never be able to play it with the one feature they were sold on. Anyways, on the better computer, I was enamored by just how good it looks, as they do a really good job at realistic textures when you have a powerful computer that can actually handle them. Something else noteworthy is that you can't jump or anything like that, which funnily enough was one of the things that he bragged about in the response video. Oddly though, even though this is 3.1, which is older than 2.1, you can jump in 2.1 but not 3.1. It's weird. This is also the only one of the 4 builds to let you actually quit out of the game without needing Task Manager. Hooray! way! You allow people to leave your game! I checked out the back, though quickly was hit with an invisible wall. Okay, fine. I'll actually go where the game wants me to go. So I head past this tree we've seen in the videos and go towards this building. Oh. Okay, I guess that's not where I'm meant to go either. Okay. I guess I'm meant to go where this turn is. Oh, this is literally it. Oh. Well, if this is considered a whole point above 2.1, I'm kinda scared that's not gonna have anything at all. What does 2.1 look like? Well, booting that version up, we're already hit with some changes. Namely, we find yet another character. Instead of this son, we see this robot chick, who, after a bit of searching, seems to be an asset that comes with Unreal 5.5. So probably not gonna turn to an actual character or entity here. In the actual game, we hop into an even more impressive looking area, which looks like real body cam footage. Again, I admit it looks great and lines up with the shorts, the only real criticism being how zoomed in the camera feels. In the readme file, he recommends that people turn around to complete the prior level first, so I decided to do so. Doing that brought me into a red room with wooden walls and the objective, find the key out. With the only thing in this room being this painting, I thought, surely isn't that simple, and proceeded to click on every little minor change in the room in hopes of finding the key. Until eventually I gave up. Maybe this is just like the preemptive area so you get the chance to read the objective, and then clicking on the painting will bring you to this pasture area where you have to actually search. So I clicked on it, the painting moved out of the frame, and then I was jarringly teleported to the same level as before. In fact, it was so jarring that I genuinely thought I missed something. It took me until my third try to realize that the painting, when it moves, shows a key behind it. And that was the key, which I probably didn't notice because the key is like a dirty copper color and kind of blends into the wall a bit. That and just teleporting just like that made me very confused and disoriented. The other loading zones don't have that issue, so I'm not really sure why they did that here. Either way though, I eventually went forward towards this hallway, which gave a flash of light that took me to a line of grass high in the sky. In front of me was an unassuming swing set, and behind me was a door. So seeing as the swings were the only thing ahead and were bathed in this nostalgic sunset, I walked forward to interact with them. And nothing. I tried clicking on the swing, the other swing, the chain, the bar, absolutely nothing. So I just walked back. The door here is also really weird in that you only teleport back if you open it, walk into the edge of it, and then several seconds later you will fade out. I initially thought they had to close it on you, as I went here several times, and just kind of throws you off because 1, there's nowhere to go at the edge here, and 2, your movement isn't locked here, so you have an additional like 5 seconds to do what you want before the loading zone takes you anywhere. Oh, and for those curious, no, you cannot fall off the edge of the map. Back at the grungy hallway, there's a third path that we can go down, a skinny hallway which takes us to the game. This section you may recognize, as it's one of the only pieces of gameplay we've been shown. This section is a Weeping Angel section where you have to keep an eye on these mannequins, because when they aren't an eye shot, they move. Juniper posted himself playing through this section a tiny bit. There's also a ticking sound in the background indicating a time limit, which got me moving as I actually felt a little unsettled. In fact, you can actually see me tense up in the footage. Your goal is to find the door, which I accidentally stumbled to immediately on my first playthrough. Overall, despite having been shown this months back, this was a good section to include because it feels like there's actual gameplay and stakes. Feels being the key word here, as I found out in my second playthrough that you cannot die. It just rewinds you. The ticking also means nothing, as it just randomly stops after a while and made no difference. This being the only game part of the game is also a little iffy given that this is just a Weeping Angel mechanic. A mechanic which, from the countless games it's been included in and the many tutorials, seems like a relatively easy mechanic to add. That added with this being shown off 3.5 months ago, there's still definite concerns around gameplay, as again, you can't even die and we've yet to see anything else. After this we see a few other cool environments. This foam cube pit, which is cool but a bit clunky, as I thought you just jump in, but that didn't work the first time, so then I thought you just had to press E, which is what worked at first, but then the second time it did work when you jumped in, so yeah, it's an alpha, it got clumped. The most impressive section of this was the punching bag area, which looked very dark and eerie, to which I started getting really excited. I started hyping myself up, like, oh shit, we're gonna see something the shorts kept cutting off. Is there gonna be some gameplay here where I have to sneak around through these bags to avoid an enemy? I mean, maybe I'll have to keep to the walls and try to find an exit. Why is it fading black? Why is it fading black? Okay. That's it? Okay. I'm not hurt. I didn't start getting excited. No, I'm fine. And so that's the end of 2.1, which was surprisingly way bigger than 3.1. 3.1 just being one room, and this one being way more willing to show off. Interestingly, they mentioned there being new betas dropping every 1 or 2 weeks with drastic changes, though to my knowledge this never happened, as at the very minimum we haven't had an update in 2 months. This being something even the YouTube Shorts promised, mentioning betas every week about 4 months ago.
And we're planning to drop a beta every week. Every week.
Though I can't fault them too hard for that, because that sounds not very feasible. Though promising it and using it to try and get people on the Patreon still makes them at least half guilty for lying, given there's been no direct statement about him stopping or anything like that. However, we aren't quite done yet, as in the time this video was being made, there was one final demo that Juniper just made as I was working. And so to include everything, I wanted to pop in a section about it too. Especially as this apparently is going to eventually become the Kickstarter demo, so says Juniper, as the Patreon members get it early to beta test and work out the kinks, which means that overall, this is a slice of the actual game, and is expected to be used for deciding whether or not you should give the Kickstarter money. So this should give us an idea of how the game's basic gameplay is, show us some of the best puzzles that we are to expect in the future, and maybe even see some entities. Given he posted several times saying that at the very minimum, the mannequins are going to be in this demo. So it seems like he's finally going to live up to that one short where he said that if you want to know what the game's about, play the demos. Now there are some oddities around this demo too, in that originally he said it would be out last month by the end of September, all the way back on the 3rd. Later, he claimed he only just started working on the first map of the demo on the 18th. After missing his first deadline, he then updates on October 3rd that the game would be out in 2 to 3 days. A day later, he said that there'd be another delay, setting him back another few days. Then 6 days later, he said tomorrow, and that the demo would be 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay, which given he said there would only be 4 maps and 3 puzzles, means each of the puzzles are only like 1.5 to 3 minutes to complete each, which made me question whether they'd really be puzzles at all before I even started playing. On October 11th, he made a post called "The Alpha is Done," smiley face, where he tells us that the alpha actually isn't done and will be done tomorrow because of a supposed packaging error. And then finally, on the 12th, he posted it, which initially gave almost everyone that originally tried to play it an error of catastrophic failure. Lucky for me though, it seems like it was fixed by the time I actually played it. Oh yeah, and funnily enough, of the 7 posts teasing the demo, only one of them is actually a screenshot of the demo. These other locations just straight up don't exist in the game. Genuinely, I don't know why he showed these. In fact, it tricked me for one particular thing I'll talk about near the end, where I played back through the game multiple times just to make sure I didn't actually miss anything. Anyways, let's boot up the game and take a look at it. Now I won't harp on this too much, but the title screen we see here is way more simple than the betas, which surprised me a little, though it does now have a working settings menu. Or at least the settings worked much more. We open up to a cutscene of us being in this corally cosmos space, where we look around confused. We keep fading in and out before we see Carl, who the forum mentioned has no animations yet, so he just kind of rigidly stands there, before we look at a star and, oh no, we're teleporting, We fade into the space area with all of these white blocks, which is meant to be the first puzzle. Juniper mentioned that the grass being gray here is actually a bug, but honestly I think it looks pretty okay being gray here, at least in my opinion. Speaking of the forum, something else that he mentioned is that he kept direction unintentionally unclear to test how players react to true confusion and liminality, which I'll try to take a bit into account, but also I imagine it'd be kind of difficult to get any real, information out of this, or to see how players react, given that unless they're being directly recorded for you to see how they react to things, which isn't a requirement on the forum, I don't see how you'd get any information out of this. That, and also a lot of the puzzles in the demo, due to their lack of direction, just feel more like stumbling around until you accidentally find the answer. It's like an even worse version of those 90s puzzle games where you don't know why that was the answer, it just kind of was, I guess. This room in particular feeling like the worst offender. Like maybe I'm just really dumb and don't understand the artistic vision, but the puzzles don't feel fun, and you don't feel smart for solving them, or feel like you solved them at all. In this level, some of these wall pieces will have an exit sign on them pointing in a direction. Initially, because this was my first time being here and I didn't know what to do with this information, I'd go up to them and just try to find the next one because they'd make a ding noise. But only sometimes, which itself also made me feel confused. Midway during it, I thought that maybe you need to follow the arrow's direction and it'll lead you to the next one, but by that point I already wandered too much and felt like I messed up the puzzle too much to solve it regularly, seeing as I didn't know which ones I had already gone to. And eventually, I randomly went to this one over here and got teleported out of the level. On my second playthrough, seeing as I thought I did it wrong the last time and just need to follow the arrow and get skewed based on these walls, seeing as they're all in different angles, I quickly learned that this was not correct. So I tried just following the arrow as accurately as possible and then passed the wall. Not correct either. Well, maybe kind of correct, as sometimes it happened to push me in the right direction, but then there'd be times where even if I did do that, I couldn't find it and it would turn out to be behind the wall entirely. Other times it was just in the direct opposite direction. So even right now, I have no idea if that even is what you're supposed to do. And maybe Juniper added more walls and didn't account for people getting confused by them, or if Juniper just threw them all over the place without much thought as some of them happened to be in the direction of the arrows pointed to. You'll know you're towards the end of it though based on if they all start being in these triangular pattern boards, because it'll take you like 2 or 3 boards before you are jarringly teleported out of there and into this green exit room, filled with complimentary floating grass, free of charge. We go down the stairs to this flower area, through this hallway, and into this area with a ladder. I try to climb it, and we hop straight into one of the worst levels that we have here today. See, there's a bunch of things that are immediately unclear upon getting here, but apparently those are all completely intentional. So intentional that I accidentally bugged out the game and had no idea for over the course of half of my playthrough. Isn't that so fun, guys? My favorite emotion is not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing, thinking I'm being a complete idiot, only for the solution to be something completely archaic. Let me give you a play-by-play. A play-by-play of which isn't just me being dumb. Here's a bunch of screenshots of other people who did roughly the exact same thing I'm about to describe. So when I first appeared here, my first thought was scary music plus red lighting equals bad. So clearly, I need to be away from the scary red lighting. I saw these little blue spots of light and quickly gathered this is probably a light puzzle, as I've seen many games where you need to stay in the light and go between several light sources because if you stay in the dark for too long, you die. So I began going between several lights. Eventually, my screen went black. I tried to turn my flashlight and heard the sound, but I couldn't see. Eventually, it faded back in, and I was away from the red lights. Oh no, I must have died because I stayed in the dark for too long. So I went back to going to the blue lights and hopping between them. The scary music had stopped for a while, but it came back. So I thought that I must be doing the right thing and something was chasing me. Oh, I died again. By the way, it takes, I counted, over 30 seconds between your screen going fully black and being unable to do anything but sit there and actually respawning. I have no idea why, but man does it make it way more frustrating when you don't know the goal of the puzzle, let alone what anything means. From what I can tell, it's like a timer, and when the water rises too much, then you die. But like, making it 30 seconds! Like, this isn't a Steam game where you can refund it unless you take a certain amount of time or anything like that. So I don't see why he puts so much stuff that's specifically there just to make it take way longer. Like, there's another thing later on where at the TV puzzle, I'm gonna mention it later, but at the TV puzzle, he randomly disabled the ability to run for some reason, even though it's not like there's any tension there, because it's just a blank room with 3 TVs in it. So there's no feeling of like, oh no, something's gonna get me or anything like that. It's just there to make things like slower for reasons. Like, why include we can't refund it. Why are you including bloat? This is meant to be the demo that makes people figure out whether they're gonna give you money for Kickstarter. What the hell? Anyways, back to respawning again. I suddenly saw this little sliver of light over in this direction. So I thought, oh, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be going towards. So I ran back towards the red lights, past the red lights, and kept running in the direction of this white light up the sky. Once I got past the red, I saw what looked to me like a white version of the red spotlight. So I took this to mean that this was the correct thing that I was supposed to be doing. Then I saw there were multiple, so I kept going towards all of the ones that I could, thinking that this was the light puzzle. Suddenly, one disappeared in front of me, and seeing as the music was fading out, I thought that I needed to keep running in this direction, because it was setting up scared, because like, oh no, the safe lights are gone, oh no! It took me nearly 3 minutes to realize I was no longer going forward, because my flashlight was still doing the walking animation, but I was unknowingly walking into an invisible wall for the past 3 minutes. Part of the reason it took me 3 minutes is because due to not dying this time, I thought that this really was the right thing, and that even though turning around looked like like they weren't getting any further. I mean, I'm clearly doing the right thing here, right? Because, I mean, the music faded, and then there was, like, they were setting up a scare, right? Being confused, I turned back, thinking maybe I was supposed to get scared that the safe lights were gone. I was supposed to run back to the red lights, seeing as they were the only ones left. So, I ran back, and the spooky music came on again. Okay, so what now? Not knowing what to do, I went all the way to this end red light, and then went across them. From there, I heard a voice line, and seemingly died again.
Can you feel it fading out?
However, despite me dying, there was now a house, which is what is actually meant to take you out of the level. Are you as confused as I was? Well, on my second playthrough, I was once again initially spawned at the red lights. You wanna know what the actual solution is? You need to turn around, go back to the end of the lights, then go forward across them all. Just going forward across the lights doesn't count. You need to touch all of them. Are there any sound cues? No. Visual cues? Also no. What were the red lights, and the white lights, and the dying that teleports you completely away from everything you're actually supposed to be doing? I don't know, I guess he put them in for the funsies? What about the music fading out? Why were there more cues for me doing absolutely nothing than there were for the actual correct answer? Well, actually, the music fading out was a complete coincidence. The music just doesn't loop correctly because Juniper didn't cut the end of it, so there's just this long silence before it comes back. Now, Juniper said that the confusion and not being told what you're supposed to do at all is meant to be because we are experiencing true liminality, and says that it's meant to be confusing because you are in a dream, and seems to see it in the way of exploration. And to be clear, there are ways of doing exploration and puzzles where you don't explain anything, but usually you have the aid of context, things that will lead you to that conclusion so you can reasonably think that, or feel stupid for not thinking that. But because logic doesn't apply in a dream, I guess we don't need any of that, like, pesky context, right? Puzzles are puzzles because we need to find a clever solution. Maybe thinking out of the box, maybe using the mastery of what we do know. And I don't mean to be patronizing here, but the definition of a puzzle, at least in relation to a puzzle rather than being puzzled, is a game, toy, or problem designed to test ingenuity or knowledge. Especially when using dream logic, there are still ways that you can design puzzles. This just doesn't feel like it. At least not to me as a player that likes puzzle games. Fell into it vaguely knowing it was likely a puzzle. Tried to use the environment Juniper made to see what it was. Used things like sound cues to make assumptions like I was shown to in the exit sign puzzle. And the answer was to just walk across the red lights, die, and then a door appears? That hardly feels like a puzzle. That feels like as much of a puzzle as pushing a button to unlock a door. But at least there you have the context of what buttons do. There was no indication that I needed to touch all of the lights to walk across them, especially with the context of the "oh no scary area" music telling me that I need to run, and the "oh no scary lights" telling me that I'm not supposed to stay in the area or something bad will happen. So the fact that the only way to solve this puzzle is to ignore every aspect of it that could be a puzzle and happen to walk into the correct area before the screen fades out and you die, just so you can die in the correct way for the specific thing to appear just cuz, makes me a little worried that if these are the best puzzles you have to show after nearly 2 years of development, one, if you're only counting post entities, but even so, the fact that these are the puzzles that you're using to try and convince people to give you money astounds me and makes me very worried for the actual quality of the one gameplay element you have. Anyways, you run towards the staple architecture of Daydream, the U house seen in the Star Entities video and pretty much any Daydream video like Deadlights or Helios. Something else that they threw me off, at least as somebody who was pretty much playing these games back to back, was that they changed the crouch button between the updates, as it used to be control. So when I couldn't get through, I started doubting myself and wondering if, despite the fact that this is the only new thing and there being a clear light telling me to go through, that maybe somehow it's not the right way either. But eventually I figured it out as they changed the button to C. We teleport once more to this new area where the TV puzzle is. Juniper had made a few posts mentioning it, so I vaguely knew that one existed. Looking around, there are 3 TVs. Turning them on will display blue, red, or green static. My first instinct was that they only need to display the same thing. So I thought that normally when a TV is not displaying a channel, they will always show blue. When that did nothing, I looked around to see if I missed anything. I didn't, so I went around and turned them all into green and then red respectively. Something I also quickly noticed is that for some reason you cannot run in this room in particular. I have no idea why. Next I thought it was meant to be RGB, like an RGB screen or how most TVs display in RGB, which is red, green, blue. And that was the solution. However, I should mention that on my second playthrough I decided to key it in and quickly realize that doing red, green, blue only counts for specific TVs. But because there aren't any means to tell which one's meant to be first, or in what direction it's counting, so I could see someone getting the right answer and then thinking that it wasn't correct at all because they thought the one in the back was the one they start with or something. I was lucky in that I picked the right one, but it's still bad puzzle design if you can do the correct answer incorrectly. Just to say something positive, I do really like this data moshing effect. Works really well here and causes some amount of panic. Because, you know, it's like a spooky effect. I've loved it ever since I saw it in Shipwreck 64. For the first time in this game, we get a loading level screen, which seems to not do its one job by the look of the walls. This happened in every playthrough I've done. Once the walls load in, we arrive in this cloud/art room with some pretty nice, subtly unsettling music. The area is very Backrooms-esque, in that there's lots of these doorways and pillars that don't really make sense, but also don't really need to. It's dark, but there's still lights here or there, giving some feeling akin to sneaking into an art university or child art exhibition after dark. In fact, these vast empty hallways give off this empty feeling that I think is pretty good for making you feel like there is something just barely out of sight. The area isn't all that difficult to pass. This is again one of those walk until you stumble into the area you're meant to be areas. In fact, it's the last area of the whole demo in that you randomly get jarred out of walking into this black screen, rather than actually going anywhere or getting to an exit door or anything. And this area is actually what caused that second playthrough, due to one thing. See, amongst all these screenshots, Juniper also kept mentioning and showing off these mannequins. You know, the no names that I saw and complimented from back in 1.2, because I really want to compare and see if they were any better, especially as Juniper claimed that he's completely changed the mechanic, and in the videos they look to just slowly go towards the player rather than earlier with the Weeping Angel mechanic. Now this had been a bit after seeing the Patreon, so I just kind of assumed that he changed the walls from red to blue, because seeing as he seemed to be saying that the mannequins would be in this build, I thought that maybe I went through it too fast and just missed them. On top of that, I also noticed that weirdly, if you face a wall, the game will fade out and will take a long time to fade back in when you look back at the lights. So, as foolish and stupid as I am, I thought that either the mannequins were still a kind of weeping angel, and that by facing the wall they'd come after me, or that the mannequins weren't really in the game, but by cowering in the corner there'd be some kind of Easter egg, because seeing as he programmed in this effect, surely it meant something. So to make sure I didn't miss anything, I stood facing this wall, pulled out my phone's stopwatch, and waited for a full 5 minutes, just to be sure. Nothing happened. But then I realized I had my light on, so maybe me having it on stops it from happening. So I waited another full 5 minutes, just to be sure. Nothing happened. So then I thought to myself, Juniper couldn't have possibly promised a feature again, and then not added it again, and then somehow nobody called him out on a very blatant lie again. Maybe they're attracted to sound. The footsteps sounds a lot louder in this level than other different levels, so maybe that was meant to be a hint. So I ran in a circle for about a minute and a half, and nothing happened. And while I was doing this, funnily enough, I did have a bit of nostalgia. Not for any of these maps, yes, my favorite childhood memory, being stuck in the void. But I more had nostalgia because of those playground rumors of like how to unlock Mew 3, or in my case, how to catch Mew in Pokemon Soul Silver, where I similarly did stupid things to try and get them to appear. And so in one last hurrah, I just ran around trying to find them, knowing that they probably aren't actually in the game, or if they are the worst entity in the game, and their mannequin families are definitely not mannequin proud of them. And despite not trying to trigger it, I accidentally escaped again, and decided I was done. Looking at the Patreon again, that's when I quickly found that several things were promised in this demo, and then just didn't. Under the mannequins, he says that you'll have to see them for yourself. Well, I can't see it, because you forgot to put them in. Silly Juniper. He also mentions that the alpha supposedly has exciting new mechanics, which I certainly didn't notice, though that either means that they don't exist, or their Juniper's kind of exciting, again on par with having a slightly different caption on the same exact short, or getting to crouch and jump in a 3D Unreal game. He said he'll be giving daily updates here until the release, so you're always in the loop, which initially I thought meant updating the game, kind of like he promised with 1.2's major update every 2 weeks. But even if he meant updating as in making a post about the game every day, he has succeeded in neither, on just the second day. First, if you don't count the post in which he posted the game. Like, all you needed to do was like make a low effort Patreon post every day, and you couldn't even do that. Why? He mentioned making 4 to 5 different alpha builds for his Patreon to test before the final, which we'll see if he does. Speaking of marketing again, there's a few other minor things I want to end off on, such as this old wishlist goal. As 5 to 6 months back, one of Juniper's original promises was that at 10k wishlist, they would be dropping the game. A statement which back then implied to many that the game was far closer to completion than it obviously is looking at it now.
My goal is at least 10,000 wish lists, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna hit that, so any and all support helps.
though this too would be silently dropped, as when he reached that goal, he would later bump it up to 50k wishlist, would still be planning on it at 45k wishlist, made comments about being so close to 50k, and then stop entirely, never mention again. Do I want it to have been released 5 months ago? No! Frankly, I doubt there was a game 5 months ago, but it shows that earlier on there was an implication of at the very least being part of the way there, and with all of the older things he marketed with being practically non-existent now. In fact, looking at his TikTok, he was pretty full-chestedly claiming that the game would be out next month, almost half a year ago, which implies even further that he was trying to make people think that this was almost done, this being prior to a lot of the entities. But if the only change was that he decided to add enemies, then he should have all the maps worked out, right? If it's just 1 month from being release ready? Now then, I just wanted to say that this conclusion section kept changing quite a lot. Again, I've had to rewrite this video countless times, added things countless times, and even then have had countless things I didn't have time to talk about in the over 2 hours I put together here. I remember at the very beginning when I wanted to title this video, I'm concerned for Daydream, that wasn't facetious, because when I first started doing research on this video, it was originally going to be talking about the good and bad of the project. But as I went on and learned all I did, I went from thinking there was some pros I could weigh against the cons, to just thinking he was a naive developer that just didn't know he has to credit his artists or show that he does work, to thinking he was just really, really stupid and doesn't know that he's setting himself up for failure, to what I think now. With how little he seems to do, I've racked my brain over this situation for longer than I've needed to, so just to clarify, this upcoming thing is my personal opinion on what I think happened, and may include some bits I've only briefly touched on back in the Subliminal portion and other parts, so this is just like a theory of how we got to this point. I think Juniper, or Miles or whatever, wants to be the guy. I think that Juniper has probably dreamed of being the indie developer that goes to a bunch of interviews because they made the game that everyone loves, oh my god. But the problem is that Juniper seems pretty clearly to not be that kind of person. You know how there's people who are really artistic and creative and have trouble with the more cold, hard stuff like math? Well, there's the other subset of people who are super good at math and rules and science, but have a hard time stepping out of that box. That is Juniper. Juniper wanted to be the guy who made an epic game and everyone praised him and throws flowers when he walks by, like the Hideo Kojimas before him, but because he lacks that innate creativity, felt like he couldn't. When he couldn't fix that through the Indie Games Academy and Animal Tracker, it looks like this channel was originally animations, with the Naruto animation and this Puppy Playtime one. And his earliest videos from their camera movement, I don't think were gameplay, because the way they move is kind of floaty, and I'm pretty sure these are also animations. I believe he saw Subliminal, the other very eerily similar project, and thought, I could make that, and started making these liminal space-inspired animations of a theoretical game, claiming that it was real, in hopes of netting in the coders to actually make it, as well as when he went more viral, hitting 2 birds with 1 stone by creating shorts that gave him a lot of comments, and doing the creative work he couldn't, like names, mechanics, and even the UI. I think he was trying to fake it until he made it. We had the first realistic liminal horror game comment since the beginning, but once he realized nobody really checked him on that lie, and when the sun situation happened where he tried to replace Helio with Deadlight, he decided that backlash was enough for him to avoid correcting people on his lies of omission, and to go even harder and more blatant as time went on, because nobody checked him, all the while keeping this image of being a solo dev despite his studio-like size, so when the game comes out, if it comes out, he can get the praise and adoration for his game and finally be the guy. Be the guy that all of those TikTok kids praise him to be and believe him to be, like a deity, despite the fact none of it is really his. Lie quick, lie fast, lie often. And if the project fails so the cards fall from a video like this, he can just dash and act like it never happened. Hence why on his actual portfolio he mentions nothing of it, every now and then posting tiny little things so it shows his progress without having to show Daydream over on LinkedIn, so that maybe one day he can get hired as a real studio developer someday. He never had a core idea of what the game is outside of realistic and liminal, because that's what liminal did. And everything outside of that is wishy-washy, like whether it's multiplayer or single player, or what you even do in the game, which especially lines up with him using eerily similar captions down to the font with a border, and using the same music in the same vague style. Also, just one last thing I wanted to tack on at the end. Back in the day, Juniper made a promise about everyone who beta tests getting a Steam key, even if they cancel their membership.
When you select the beta test tier, not only do you get to beta test the previous beta and so on, every person who helps to test will get one even if they cancel their membership.
It also says in all the Patreon tiers that he'll put your name in the credits. And both of these are meant to still happen even if you cancel your Patreon. Sorry, it's like 1 in the morning and I'm recording this the night before this video is supposed to launch. I don't know how I didn't notice this in the footage, but he left the fucking ChatGPT prompt in the Patreon tier. So I no longer have to say alleged about that earlier comment I made about ChatGPT. Here's the proof. It literally says, sure, here's a polished version of your description that says everything clearly and highlights the free Steam key. And he was so lazy, he didn't even remove it. And as of a few days later, it still says that. Did you really need ChatGPT to write out that you get the demos and your name in the credits and a free Steam key? Like, did you really need? Juniper, you're hopeless. Right near the end of this video, I decided that I want to be exactly sure of whether he upholds these two promises. So, I decided to up my $1 tier to a $5 tier to ensure my slot at getting a Steam key should the game ever actually get done. So Juniper, if you're watching, please be sure to send my Steam key to this address, and I'll be looking forward to seeing my name in the credits alongside Cupco and iPatchout12. I'll be waiting! In summary, there are countless things that should absolutely make you wary about putting your pocket change into this project. No real clue of what the gameplay is like, the main entities everyone loves being made by someone else entirely, which Juniper explicitly seems to hide and keep doing, way too many entities, many of which are given contests to gather fan labor without ever uttering their names, getting funding for one game while bouncing to the next, seemingly having bounced from an unfinished project before. It's all something that tells me I should be concerned for Daydream, and so should you. Given Juniper's reply to doubts about his game before, I would not be surprised if he made a response to this or fell on his own sword, but if he does, I hope he responds to, at the very minimum, these larger sections and arguments that I talked about here. But if the game does come out and it turns out that's the best game ever and I was wrong to be concerned, then I'd love to make a video titled I was wrong to be concerned about Daydream or something. But as it stands, if I were you, I wouldn't put money into this. I say, as I just gave the guy $7 total, but to be fair, I think including the actual game in its current state is a pretty important aspect to this whole story. Anyways, comment down below please, this took 3 months and it's a 2-hour-long video, so that's all I have for now. Until next time, bye-bye!